Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku was a Mafia heir part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below and let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝐻𝗨𝙢𝙢 from Wattpad. So let's start the video. It was just another night on the town. I was sent out to get some info about another mafia group called the Red Shinigami. So how I ended up here is really beyond me. I often come to this club to grab some info. I'm a regular here. It was noisy and drunk people were everywhere as usual. So I went over to play some pool over in a seemingly quieter area of the club where I thought I was gonna be fine. I usually play pool when I ask people questions. They seem to focus on the game more than the questions that I ask. So they kinda just answer the questions without thinking. It's a pretty useful trick I picked up a while ago when I was around 16. Today was like every other night. I was just coming to the usual club to grab some info. Going to play some pool with some people. I was asking a question while I was bending over the pool table to play. So, do you know I was in the middle of asking someone a question. That's when a guy from behind me started feeling me up. I quickly turn around with a shocked expression. The guy had pinned me between the pool table and his two arms. He was a pretty big guy too, around 6'3". That's pretty big for someone who's only 5'5". Excuse me, can you please back away dash. I tried to make some space between us by leaning back on the pool table. Though it didn't do that much of a difference since he quickly closed the distance with his body. Yeah, I'm in the Mafia and I'm in a pretty high rank as well, but my job isn't to fight. I never wanted to learn how to fight. Instead of learning how to fight, I learned how to manipulate people and get inside of their heads. Along with hacking and strategy. I was the main mastermind behind most of our big missions. Come on cutie, you just looked so good up there. He leaned in closer to my face. He didn't smell or seem drunk or anything, so I couldn't really understand why he was doing this. Maybe just a perv. The person I was talking to was a little tipsy and probably forgot about me. It didn't seem that people around us realized I was uncomfortable with the situation either. Probably thought we were just getting it on. Listen, I need to go. I was starting to lose my cool. Things like this always did make me lose it. Reminded me too much of life before I met Aizawa, Hisashi and Hitoshi. I pushed my hands up against the guy's chest trying to push him away. I looked away trying to get some distance between our faces. He just went down to my neck and started to kiss it. I felt tears starting to well up in my eyes, threatening to fall. W8-. Before he could go any further, another guy pulled him off me, pushing him onto the ground. I looked over at the guy or guys that had saved me. It was a guy with red hair and a guy with blonde hair with a black lightning bolt going through it. They stood on either side of the guy who was now sitting on the ground. Another guy with ash blonde hair stood right above the guy's head, glaring down at him. He squatted down and pulled a gun out of his waistband, hiding it behind his jacket. Probably so the rest of the club didn't see. That wasn't very nice. I watched in shock at what was going on. My body still leaning up against the pool table. He pushed the gun up against the side of his head. If I ever see you in my club again, I'll blow your head off. The guy on the ground nodded his head really quickly. The ash blonde smirked down at him and put the gun back in his pants. Good. Now get the out. The guy quickly gets up and runs out. I watch as he runs out before turning my attention back to the guy with ash blonde hair and the other two men. I need to talk to you, the ash blonde said before grabbing my hand and dragging me away. He dragged me to some kind of office in the upper level of the club. His two friends followed us the whole way. He walked into the office still holding onto my wrist before letting go and gesturing towards a couch in the surprisingly big office. I went over and sat on the couch, already confused on what's going on. He went over to the other two men and told them to leave before coming over and sitting on the couch, sitting across from the couch I was sitting on. What are you doing here? He said as he poured some whiskey into a glass. I gave him a confused look. He couldn't actually know what I was up to, right? He's just a club owner. What do you mean? I'm just here to play pool and talk with people. He slammed the bottle of whiskey down on the coffee table, leaning back and sipping on whiskey as he glares at me. Do you think I'm that stupid? What the hell is an info broker doing at my club? My mouth opens before it quickly closes. I needed to think before I say something. Right now he just thinks I'm an info broker and doesn't know I'm actually in the Mafia. Unless he does. I've been going to this club for years and I hadn't thought about checking out who the owner is. How dumb could I possibly be? What do you think? I'm looking for info. He leans in, propping his elbows on his knees. He gives me a smirk as he twirls the whiskey in his glass. Listen, I know you saw the gun downstairs. Don't make me use it on you, sweetheart. My eyes widen for a second, but I quickly calm myself down. It wouldn't be the first time I've had a gun to my head. Hell, this isn't the first time someone's found out I'm looking for information. Though it's not a bad thing to be an info broker. When they find out you are an info broker, they usually get angry when they find out you've been collecting info from them. Now, tell me who you're collecting info on. I narrow my eyes at him, trying to get why he'd want to know. Is he worried it's him? It's not like it is him, so it's not that big of a deal if I tell him. Plus, even if he goes around telling people that I'm looking into the Mafia, it's not like they'll know exactly who is looking into them. All I need to think about right now is getting out. I'm looking into the Red Shinigami. They're a Mafia group. He looks up at me from the drink he was twirling. And why is that? I roll my eyes from all the questions. It's usually me asking the questions, not the other way around. You've got a lot of attitude for someone that's being threatened with a gun, he says with a slight smirk. I lean back in the sofa. Yeah, well, this isn't the first time. Anyways, someone I know wants to propose an offer to them. Before they can do that, they need to know how to get into contact with them. The blonde got up and walked over to his desk. It was in front of a large window facing the city. He goes into one of the drawers and grabs a card before coming back to me. He towers above me, holding out the business card. Give them this. I take the card. On the card was written Bakugo Katsuki along with a number. I quickly jump up and stare at him. Why your Bakugo Katsuki? He smirks at me and walks back over to the couch, sitting down with his whiskey. Yeah. Tell them to call me. I couldn't believe that for the last half an hour I had been talking to the leader of the Red Shinigami. I quickly put the card in my pocket and made my way to the door, blushing from the embarrassment that I hadn't realized who he was until now. See you later, he said, raising his whiskey in the air as I opened the door and left. I walked into the house with a bit of a huff. I go into the living room hoping to find Aizawa. Fortunately for me, he was there. Unfortunately, he was on the ground in his yellow sleeping bag, snoozing the day away. It's the middle of the afternoon at this point. You would think that the bum would be awake. Not him. No, he sleeps whenever he likes. So I walk into rooms seeing him sleeping at random times more than often. Aizawa, I got the info. I actually got it last night, but I had a few errands to run, I say as I kick the side of his sleeping bag. He groggily gets up from his sleeping bag, folding it up once he had climbed out. You got the contact information. How exactly? I groan in annoyance. I didn't really want to tell him how I got the info since it was a little embarrassing. So I just hand him the card as I walk by. All you need to know is I got the info. Now go ahead and make a meeting or something. I'll be in my room. I head off to my room as he looks at the card. I was exhausted from last night. I didn't get to sleep because I had to do a few things. As soon as I make it to my room, I flop onto my bed. I cover myself up with my large comforter that Hisashi got for me last Christmas. It's super nice and fluffy. I start to fall asleep thinking about Bakugo Katsuki. He was so young, yet he was a mafia boss. It was such a strange thing to me. He couldn't be that much older than me. Maybe a year or two older. With those few thoughts, I drifted off to sleep. It had been about a week since I met Bakugo Katsuki. As I'm sitting on my bed reading a book, I hear a knock on my door. Come in. I yell out, not even looking away from my book. It was finally getting to the good part, so I was a little ticked I was getting interrupted. Hitoshi opened the door wearing a nice suit. With him was Aizawa. Why aren't you ready? Aizawa said with a tired tone. I closed my book with a confused look. What are you talking about? Ready for what? Aizawa groans and glares at Hitoshi. You forgot to tell him? Hitoshi shrugs and gives Aizawa a bored look. I guess so. I get up from the bed, giving them an even more confused look. What the hell are you guys talking about? Aizawa pinches the bridge of his nose. You're going to the meeting with the Red Shinigami. As my heir you have to get used to meetings. I groan in annoyance. I try to push the whole "you're my heir" thing to the back of my mind. Hitoshi was technically supposed to be the heir but absolutely refuses. You would think he would be into that kind of thing since he likes fighting and guns and 𝐎𝐻𝑇. The only reason he says he doesn't want to be the heir to the Shi No Karasu is because he says it's too much work. Now I'm the heir. Even though I'm not exactly skilled in fighting or guns, Aizawa and Hisashi or Dad and Pops think I'm good enough to be their heir. They think that someone with such a strategic and smart mindset would be a great leader. They also think that since I'm so great with people I'd be a good leader as well. I find it kind of weird sometimes that they'd want some kid they found on the streets 10 years ago, when I was 12, to be their successor. Granted, they've always looked at me as if I was their own child. Same with Hitoshi. They've always treated us like we were their own BLD-related children. And I guess in their eyes, we are. Fine, let me get changed. I shut the door and got ready. I did all my hygiene earlier that day, so I was all done when it came to that. I quickly changed into a suit with a vest and tie. I put on a long coat to complete the look as well. I go in front of the mirror to try and fix my hair. Of course it was a mess, but I tried my best to take care of it. I opened the door and walked down to the living room, finding Aizawa and Hitoshi already there. Hisashi doesn't normally partake in these kinds of things, usually taking care of things that include the members of the Mafia. As a Mafia we do many things. The Shi No Karasu Mafia often does more assassination gigs. We're known to be more quiet and subtle about things. You won't know what's about to happen till the moment you're killed. That's what Hisashi takes care of. Getting and handling gigs. We also do a lot of information trading or selling. We have a lot of info brokers in our Mafia. I myself am one. Though I'm a highly respected one since I'm the son of the Mafia boss. Though I'm not just a regular info broker. I also manage a lot of our missions. When we have a big idol assassination, or maybe we have a few people that need to be killed, I'm usually the one that plans it. My strategic and big picture thinking is what gets it done. Not to mention I have some hacking skills, so that always comes in as useful. Of course, that's just what Shi No Karasu is known for. Other mafias are known for other things as well. Take Red Shinigami for example, they're known for their bloody massacres. When they kill someone they leave red and BLD everywhere. They're also very popular for their gun trade. One of the reasons why we're trying to partner up with them. You ready to go? I nod my head as I adjust my tie. We walk out the house making our way to the car. We all get into the car and start driving to the meeting place. After driving for about 30 minutes we arrive at a fancy restaurant. We step out of the car and make our way in. Well, at least he has taste. Hitoshi whispers in my ear as we walk into the front door. We were greeted by a waiter at the front. He was wearing a nice tuxedo and looked very well kept. Do you have a reservation? The waiter asked while looking down at some kind of book. Yeah, it should be under the name Bakugo. The waiter looks up from the book with a suspicious glare. And what might your name be? Aizawa gave him a suspicious glare back. In order to get into meetings there's often a code that you have to say. Each person has a different code. Erase her head. These two are with me. Aizawa points to Hitoshi and I as he speaks. The waiter nods hesitantly as he starts to look back down at the book. He crosses something out before gesturing for us to follow him. Make sure you guys stay on guard. We still don't have that much information on them. Aizawa says as we walk to a private room in the restaurant. The waiter opens a door revealing a dimly lit VIP room. In the room was 3 men, the same men I saw at the club. Bakugo was sitting at the head of a semi-long table, with the 2 men on either side of him. It looked as if the 2 men were having a conversation but stopped when we entered the room. Bakugo looked at us with a smirk on his face. So you must be the leader of Shi No Karasu. Why don't you have a seat? Bakugo gestured towards the other end of the table. Aizawa sat at the other head of the table, while Hitoshi and I sat on either side of him. I'm glad you took the time to meet us, Aizawa said, propping his elbows on the chair arms and leaning back. Of course, how could I say no when your attempt to get in contact was so enticing? Bakugo glances over at me. I look back at Bakugo with a slight blush on my face. I try to keep a straight face, suppressing the blush to the best of my abilities. Aizawa side-eyes me with slight interest. I still haven't told him about the whole incident with Bakugo. It's slightly embarrassing as an info broker. Glad that I could entertain you, I say with a snarky tone. Aizawa gives me a glare. I'm not exactly supposed to speak during these meetings, though it didn't look like Bakugo minded. He just looked at me with interest and that damned smirk on his face. So who exactly are these two with you today, Aizawa? Bakugo says, turning his attention back to Aizawa. Aizawa sighs under his breath. He looks over at Bakugo with his usual bored expression, though you could tell there was a hint of annoyance. This here is Shinso and this is Midoriya, he says, nodding at the both of us as he said our names. Bakugo nodded in response. Examining both Hitoshi and I, what exactly is their roles in the Shi No Karasu? Bakugo says with a bit of a more neutral look. Aizawa looks even more annoyed now. Surely it was because he wanted to talk about the partnership then go home and sleep. Now the conversation is completely off topic. Hitoshi is our tops man. He's trained in martial arts and gunmanship. He's also exceptionally gifted in academics. Aizawa said, gesturing towards Hitoshi. And him? Bakugo said, slightly pointing towards me. Midoriya is our brains of most of our operations. He runs most of our big missions. He's also an info broker. He's probably the best we have. When we need information, he makes sure to get it. He's trained in multiple things, spanning from manipulation to hacking. Aizawa said, gesturing towards me. They're also both your children, correct? Bakugo said with a slight mischievous grin. Yes, that's common knowledge. Aizawa said, narrowing his eyes slightly. So who out of these two is the heir? Bakugo asks, looking between Hitoshi and I. Midoriya is also common knowledge. Aizawa said, not really liking these questions. Now that I understand the situation, what exactly would you like out of this partnership? Bakugo said, leaning back in his chair and crossing his legs. I would like access to your guns. In return you'll have access to my men. Aizawa says, trying to make things fair. Bakugo looks at Aizawa before flickering his eyes between Hitoshi and I. That sounds like a fair deal. Though I want two specific men to make sure I have leverage if you ever try to betray me. Bakugo said, smirking at Aizawa. My eyes open wide once I realize where this was going. Aizawa's eyes narrow as he starts to think about what he should do. And those two men would be Dash. Aizawa says with an annoyed tone. Midoriya and Hitoshi, of course. Who else would I want for leverage? Bakugo looks over at Hitoshi and I with a smirk. I roll my eyes at him, not really caring who he is. Surely Aizawa wouldn't agree to these terms. Fine. Though if something happens to them, then it will mean you went against our agreement. I will not hesitate to go against you if either of them is hurt in any way. Aizawa said with a stern tone and a glare to accompany it. Sounds fair enough. Bakugo said, standing up from his chair. I look over to Hitoshi to see how he was handling this. All I could see on his face was pure annoyance. Of course he would be annoyed. This is a huge inconvenience for him. Aizawa stands up as well. Bakugo and Aizawa lean over the table, extending their hands. Great doing business with you, Bakugo says as they shake their hands, sealing the deal. We'll talk more about this over the phone, Aizawa said as he pulled away from the handshake. Of course. It was a pleasure speaking with you, Bakugo said as he straightened his jacket. Dad nodded at Hitoshi and I to stand up. I got up, slightly glaring at Bakugo, who only grinned back in amusement. See you later, Bakugo said, smirking at me. I huffed as I left the room. Hitoshi and Aizawa followed after me, clearly confused on why I was acting like this. What was that about? Hitoshi asked as I walked out of the entrance of the restaurant. I just hate that arrogant 𝐕. Aizawa gave me a confused and shocked look while Hitoshi watched in slight amusement. What happened while you were getting info? Dad said as we walked over to the car. I groaned as I got into the back seat. I've been hiding this from them for too long. I told them what had happened. From when Bakugo pulled a gun on the guy harassing me to when Bakugo had revealed that he was the leader of the Red Shinigami. He should have shot him. I know I would have. Aizawa says, slightly starting to speed up. Did you get a good look of the guy? Or maybe a name? Maybe an address? Hitoshi says, looking back from the front seat. Not really. I was too focused on the guy with a gun. I say with a bit of snap to my tone. Hitoshi rolls his eyes as he goes back to facing forward in his seat. Aizawa grunts, annoyed by the lack of details on the guy. If I ever see the guy again, I'll let you guys know first. I say, rolling my eyes and smiling a little bit at their protectiveness. Good. Though I find it a little funny that the great Deku didn't know he was talking to Bakugo Katsuki. You know, Bakugo Katsuki, the leader of the Red Shinigami. The guy you were literally sent to find information on. Hitoshi says teasingly. I bang my head on the back of my seat. Hearing my stupid nickname just made things worse. Being known as Deku for my great work as an info broker and then not knowing I was talking to the person I was getting info on. It was a little embarrassing. Things happen, Hitoshi. Just like that time when you were supposed to infiltrate that one gang. Remember? The one that had been messing with our clients. Though it seemed as though you made too much noise and ended up getting chased by over 20 men out of their base. I said as I looked at my nails. Hitoshi looked back from the front seat glaring at me. He was flustered with embarrassment. You little dashed, Hitoshi started his sentence as he glares at me. Stop, you too. Everyone has made their own mistakes while going on missions. Dad glares at both of us as he stops the car. We had pulled into the driveway of the mansion. We live in a very nice, very large mansion. I've lived here since Dad and Papa brought me in. Now let's go in. We have some things to discuss. Dad says as he gets out of the car. Hitoshi and I look at each other knowing exactly what he means by discuss. I groan as I get out of the car and make my way to the entrance of the mansion. As soon as I make my way into the living room, I'm grabbed and picked up into the air. As I'm being squeezed to death, I look at my capturer. I wasn't too surprised when I saw a man with popping blonde hair holding me captive. Let me go, Papa, I say, struggling against his grip. But I want hugs, he says as he continues to hug me. I finally wiggle out of his grip. I hold my chest, gasping for breath. The man could have killed me if he held on to me any longer. Leave him alone, Hisashi, Dad said as he hugged Papa from behind, kissing Papa's cheek. Hitoshi and I fake gagged at the scene. Though in reality we both thought they were the cutest couple in the world. You two are such brats, Papa said when he saw us fake gagging. Hisashi got out of Aizawa's grip and ran at us. Hitoshi and I quickly ran away, trying our best to avoid Papa's wrath. Aizawa quickly joined the fun, running around along with Hisashi to try and catch Hitoshi and I. Stop, I said when Dad grabbed Hitoshi and I in a hug. Soon enough Papa joined us in the hug. Hitoshi and I groaned, though we complied and hugged them back. Sadly, our little family moment didn't last long when Dad got a phone call. Hello, Dad said in an annoyed voice as he answered the phone. We all exited the hug as Dad left to take his call. I went upstairs to my room to go and do some more research on the Red Shinigami. When I got in my room, I quickly went over to my walk-in closet to grab some more comfy clothes. I wasn't exactly a fan of suits and ties. I grabbed a pair of sweatpants and a t-shirt. Once I changed, I went over to my desk so that I could finally get some more info. Sitting down at the desk, I opened a new tab on my computer. I started to do a few things on it to make sure nobody could track me in case I ended up doing anything illegal. Which I probably will. I might be able to find something on the dark web about them, though it'll be a bit risky, I say, muttering to myself. There are a few chat rooms on the dark web where you can go for info. Of course, that's if you have the right skills to get in. I just so happen to be very skilled. While I start to try and get on a chat room, I open one of the drawers to my desk. In there is where I keep my snacks. I of course get the munchies when I do my work, so I make sure there are always some in there. As I'm sitting there munching and trying to get into the dark web, I hear a knock on the door. Yeah, I yell with a mouth full of chips. Can I come in? Hitoshi says from the other side of the door. Sure, I say, putting another handful of chips in my mouth. Hitoshi walks in, shutting the door behind him. He comes over and leans over my shoulder to see what I'm doing. You doing your nerd SHT again? He teases. Yeah. Trying to get more info on the Red Shinigami. More like more info on Bakugo Katsuki actually. I say, still typing. How are yo dash, Hitoshi started to say. I did it, I say, almost jumping out of my chair. Green Bunny, I don't need to know anything about his looks. More like his skill set and his personality. Revelry in the Dark 12. He's well trained in guns, hand-to-hand combat, and manipulation. He grew up in a mafia household, so he was taught these things from a young age. He's known as aggressive and hot-headed, though he's also known to be level-headed when in a mission, along with being a good leader. Some people say when he's in a mission or a meeting he's a completely different person than when he's not. Green Bunny. Is he known to be in butt? Revelry in the Dark 12. Not sure why you'd want to know this, but yeah. I guess you could say he's in butt. Green Bunny. Thanks for the info. How much do you want? Revelry in the Dark 12. Since it was just basic info, not that much, but I'll have to add some since it was info on a mafia boss. If someone like that ever found out I was selling info on him, I'd surely get killed. So how about 1K? Green Bunny. That sounds fair. Send me the details and I'll send the money. I ended up giving the guy the money. He did give me some useful information. Plus he wasn't lying when he said Bakugo would probably kill him if he found out about him. I got up from my seat stretching a bit. I remembered that Hitoshi wanted to talk to me. I get up after I turned off and did a few security checks on my computer. Can never be too safe after going on the dark web. Hey Hitoshi. I say, knocking on his door. Come in. He yells through the door. I walk in the room. I see Hitoshi on his bed reading a book with one of the many cats we have. I go and take a seat on the side of the bed. What did you want earlier? I say, petting the cat named Lot. Well, I just wanted to talk to you about the whole thing with the Red Shinigami. Hitoshi says, closing his book. You mean the situation we're in because of that, but Bakugo? I say, groaning a little. Yeah, I guess you could say that. Hitoshi says, sitting up. What do you want to talk about it? I say, looking at him, a bit confused. Well, I just wanted to know your plan. He says, looking at me with his usual tired eyes. I don't really have one yet. We don't have all the details. Though I think the call Dad got earlier was Bakugo or someone from the Red Shinigami. Hopefully by tomorrow we'll know what the arrangements are. I say as I continue to pet the cat. Yeah, I guess you're right. I just find this all to be a huge inconvenience. I could be staying home and hanging out with the cats. Instead I have to go with some arrogant, but I don't know. Hitoshi says with a sigh. Yeah, I'm not exactly excited either. I say, sighing as well. You should go get some sleep. Don't want you tired. Who knows when we'll be leaving? We might be leaving tomorrow. Hitoshi said jokingly. I roll my eyes as I get up from his bed. I open his door and turn around to face him again. Hey, at least we'll be doing it together. I say with a slight smile. Yeah. If you weren't gonna be there, I would probably end up killing someone. He says with a snicker. I roll my eyes again and leave. I walk down the hall back to my room. I go back into my room, making my way straight to my bed. At least I have my bed. I quickly drift off to sleep as I lay there. I had already woken up and taken a shower. I'm wearing a black and green sweater with a white button up underneath, black jeans, black combat boots, a dark red beanie, and a pair of thinly rimmed glasses. I'm currently arguing with my papa and dad. Hitoshi was there too, though he was just sitting on the couch with an expression mixed with annoyance and exhaustion. What do you mean we are leaving today? I yelled. Can you please be quiet? I'm trying to read. Hitoshi says as he reads on the couch. How can you be so calm right now, Hitoshi? They're literally gonna have us leave today. I scream back at Hitoshi. Listen, Izuku, I know it's not ideal, but this is just how things were arranged. Papa says, trying to calm me down. It doesn't matter if you agree with it or not anyways. We'll have your stuff sent over to where you'll be staying in a different vehicle. You guys are leaving, so go get in the car. Dad says, giving me a stern tone as he talks. I give a loud huff as I walk out of the room. Hitoshi follows after me, closing his book and jumping off the couch. I could hear Papa and Dad sigh from the other room. I sit in the back seat with Hitoshi next to me. We're having a driver take us to Bakugo's place since Dad and Papa have work to do. Didn't you shitty extras come and get me? He says with a sickening grin. We thought you were busy with Momo and thought it was best not to bother. Mina says, shrugging, not really paying much attention to Bakugo. So you let them sit here for an hour and wait for me? He says, pinching the bridge of his nose. I guess. Kirishima says, looking up from the game for a second before going back to it. Bakugo grabs his gun from his waistband and points it at the TV. He shoots 3 holes into the TV the 4 were playing games on. Next time come and get me, Bakugo says as he puts the gun back. Kaminari groans and throws the game controller on the couch. Shiro sighs and goes to the kitchen to make a sandwich. Mina and Kirishima decide to play some cards. That was the 3rd TV this month, you know, Bakugo. Shiro says as he makes his sandwich. I don't care. Bakugo screams while clenching his fists. Hitoshi doesn't even look up from his phone throughout the whole event. I, on the other hand, was dumbfounded. What in the actual hell goes on here? Anyways, these are our 2 newest members. They're well-respected members of the Shi No Karasu. Bakugo says, taking a seat on the couch next to Hitoshi and I. They're from Shi No Karasu? Mina says, looking away from her cards. Yeah. They both have their own skill set. They're well-trained in their own field. Bakugo says, leaning on the back of the couch. Yeah, I've heard a little bit about Deku. You're a hacker, right? What else do you do? Mina says, still playing cards? Who the F is Deku? Bakugo says, looking at Hitoshi and I. We gave them our nicknames. We didn't know who they were. We expected you. Unfortunately, you were busy. I said with a little bit of attitude. Remember, you're under me now, Deku. Bakugo says, glaring at me. Really? If I remember correctly, this is a partnership. Hitoshi says, side glancing Bakugo. Do remember who disrespected the other first by being late, Bakugo? I said with a teasing smile. TCH, you stupid extras. Whatever, let's just get this over with. Bakugo said, leaning back even further into the couch. Let me introduce you to my team. This is Raccoon Eyes. She basically does a lot of the gun SHT here. She handles most of the trading. She's also really skilled with guns. Bakugo says as he points to Mina. This is Pikachu. He does a lot of the brute force stuff along with shitty hair. They both basically go around killing people for me. Though they're the best at it, so they're on my team. He says, pointing at Kaminari and Kirishima. This is Tape Dispenser. He does a lot of the long-range shooting. Basically, he's our sniper. Though if he needs to, he can go in and just shoot people with a pistol or some SHT, she says, gesturing towards Shiro. What are your guys' real names? Kaminari asks. Call me Midoriya or Deku. I say nonchalantly. I'm Shinso or Puppeteer. Shinso says, still not having taken his eyes off his phone. Great, now that you extras have met the other extras, show them to their rooms. Bakugo says, getting up from the couch. But first you're gonna be late to meet your own guests in your own home, now you're gonna have other people show them to their rooms. Hitoshi says, looking up from his phone and smirking up at Bakugo. You know he's got a good point there, Bakugo. I say teasingly. TCH, follow me. He says before stomping off. Hitoshi and I snicker before we go and follow Bakugo. I could have sworn I heard laughing as we left the living room. We walked down the halls in silence. It seemed as though Bakugo didn't really like our rebellious behavior towards him. Though what did he expect? I mean, he made us come the day after the meeting and then made us wait an hour to see him. Even if it wasn't his fault. It's still annoying. This is your room, eye bags. Bakugo says, pointing with his thumb towards a room in the hall. Thanks. Hitoshi says and walks into the room. Hitoshi and I wave to each other before he completely shuts his door. It was kind of weird being in an unknown place and being away from him. Though at least we were in the same vicinity. Follow me, I'll show you your room next. Bakugo says as he starts to walk. We were walking for about a minute until we got to another room. He opens the door to behold a big emissary bedroom. I wasn't expecting this. I say, a little surprised. What did you expect? This is my room. He says with a sly smirk. I snap my head back at him. I had a look of confusion, anger, and disgust. What the hell do you mean it's your room? I thought you were taking me to my room. I say, yelling a little. You're not the only one that shares. Your brother is sharing with Pikachu. Plus Raccoon Eyes is a chick, so you can't share with her, and Tape Dispenser smokes pot a lot, so I doubt you'd want to share with him. Bakugo says, leaning against the door frame. This is a big mansion. You're telling me you don't have any more rooms? I wave my arms around as I talk. Most of the rooms are taken up by storage. Along with the fact we have another person living here. Also a girl. You just haven't met her yet. Headphone jack is pretty chill. He had the same smirk on his face as he spoke. Where the hell am I supposed to sleep? I say angrily. On the bed with me. Sleep in the bed with you? I say blushing a little bit. Oh yeah. Bakugo says with a smirk. I'd rather sleep on the ground. I with a flustered face and angry tone. You can't sleep on the floor. Bakugo yells back at me. I'm not gonna sleep on the bed with you. I yell back with a red face. Now I'm laying next to Bakugo in the king-sized bed. My face was flushed a dark red and I was huddled to the edge trying not to touch him. It's not that I hate him so much that I don't want to touch him. It's just that he's actually kind of attractive. As much as I hate to admit that the arrogant but as good-looking he actually is. So, being in the same bed as him has me extremely flustered. I can only think how Hitoshi and his roommate is. I think Bakugo said he was sharing with Kaminari. Knowing Hitoshi, he probably forced Kaminari to sleep on the floor or maybe one of the couches in the living room. Then again, I don't know Kaminari enough to know how well he would take that. Why are you so far away? You scared I'm gonna bite? Bakugo teases. What? And no. I say as I face away from him. I could feel his eyes burning into the back of my head. Trying my best though, I squeezed my eyes shut and ignored it. Whatever. Good night, Deku. Bakugo muttered before turning away. Gee, good night. I stuttered out. I woke up the next morning feeling really warm. It was nice, but whatever I was next to was also definitely not a pillow. I guess I don't really mind though. It's nice and warm, so it's good enough. I just snuggled my body further into it. I slowly started to open my eyes. I was kind of curious to see what this mystery object was. I might have to get one when I get home. Good morning, Sleeping Beauty. Bakugo says, looking down at me. Good morning, Bakugo. I say groggily, looking back up at him. Wait, Bakugo. I say, realizing our bodies are dangerously close. I quickly jump off Bakugo. As I do that, he chuckles with an amused smirk on his face. I sit on my knees and glare down at him. Where we dash? I stutter out with a flustered face. You tell me. You're the one that was on my side. I woke up like that? Bakugo said, pointing his head towards my side of the bed. I look over to my side and surely enough it was empty. We were on his side of the bed. I look down at my lap, blushing even harder. Where are my clothes? Did they bring them? I say, trying to change the topic. Yeah, they're in the closet over there. Bakugo says, pointing to a door. Thanks, I mumble. Quickly jumping out of the bed, I make my way over to the closet. It was a walk-in closet, which I was thankful for. I have a lot of clothes. I ended up putting on a black turtleneck, black ripped jeans, and a long beige jacket. When I came out of the closet, which was big enough to change in, Bakugo was still there. I'm actually kind of happy, otherwise I probably would have gotten lost in the mansion. The extras want to go to the club today. You want to come? Bakugo says while texting on his phone. Okay. What time is it? I say, making my way over to my phone sitting on the nightstand. Around 11:30, Bakugo says, still texting. I pick my phone up and check to see the time. It really was 11:30. I guess I was just tired from yesterday's events. Isn't it a little early to go to the club? I say, looking up from my phone. We usually go pretty early to do some prep and I do some paperwork. Bakugo says, texting. Oh, I guess that makes sense. I walk over to the mirror and brush my hair. Are you gonna come, Deku? Bakugo says, looking up from his phone. Depends, is Hitoshi coming? Continuing to brush my knotty hair, I ask. Apparently Pikachu got him to come. Bakugo says, getting off the bed. That shocked me a bit. Hitoshi rarely leaves the house. The only reason he'll leave is if he has a mission or a meeting. I guess I'll come then. I say, still a little shocked. Great. I'm gonna get changed. You can wait here or try and make your way to the living room. He says, going into the closet. I think I'll just wait. I'm not sure how to get. I say, looking back at my phone. Bakugo walks back out after about 10 minutes. He was wearing a dark orange muscle shirt, black jeans, and a black leather jacket. Let's go. Bakugo says, making his way to the door. I quickly follow after him. We make our way to the living room to meet the others. Surely enough, when we get there, everyone was there and ready to go. Shitty hair, you're driving one car. I'll drive another. I don't care what car you idiots take, just take one. Bakugo says as he makes his way to the front. I go up to Hitoshi and smile at him. He smiles back slightly as we walk to the front door together. How was last night? I ask Hitoshi as we walk. Annoying. Kaminari wouldn't stop talking. So I kicked him out of the room. He slept on the couch, I think. Hitoshi said with a sigh. I don't be so mean, Hitoshi. I'm sure he's just trying to be your friend. I laugh a little as I speak. Whatever. What about you? Hitoshi asks. What? I shared a bed with Bakugo. I say, blushing a little. Hitoshi stops in the middle of the hall. Luckily we were behind everyone else so nobody noticed. Hitoshi glares over at me. You shared a bed with that butt? Hitoshi glares into my eyes. What did you want me to do? Sleep on the floor? I didn't know where the living room was either. I roll my eyes a little. He didn't touch you or anything, did he? Hitoshi whispers to me. No, I roll my eyes again and start to walk. Now come on, we don't want to get lost. I wave for Hitoshi to hurry up. Hitoshi groans and quickly follows. We both quicken our pace so that we're next to everyone. As soon as we make our way up there, Hitoshi gives an annoyed glare at Bakugo, who in return just gives an amused smirk. Hitoshi and I walked out to the front of the house. There were 2 cars sitting in the loop waiting. Bakugo was sitting in one with Kaminari in the front. Kirishima was in the driver's seat in the other one with the rest of the crew piled in. Guess we're going with our roomies? Hitoshi says, saying roomies with a girly voice. Let's just get in. I say, laughing a little. We climb into the back of the car. Bakugo looks at me through the mirror. I look away quickly, still kind of embarrassed from earlier. Man, it's so cool to have a roommate. Don't you think, guys? Kaminari says, looking back from his seat. You literally slept on the couch last night? I say with a slight smile. Yeah, but we got to talk before that. It was fun. Kaminari says, smiling. Why, you don't make any sense? I say, blushing a little from his bright smile. Kaminari really confuses me. He has such a positive outlook on the world. Even after I kicked him out of the room for talking too much, he still looks at it positively. He looks at it as a time we bonded. It's refreshing, having someone around that isn't so gloomy all the time. Maybe that's why I agreed to come today. I actually want to be around his positivity. Even if I don't like to go to clubs and stuff. I'm willing to do it to see some more of this happiness. Ah, come on, Shinso. Lighten up. I got to learn a lot about you last night. He says while tilting his head and smiling. I didn't really say anything. I lean my head on the window as we talk. You talked enough. Either way it gave me, you know. Kaminari says, making weird squiggly hand gestures when he said vibes. Vibes? What vibes did I give you? I say, sighed, glancing him from the window. All I can tell you is they're good vibes. Kaminari said before facing the front again. I rolled my eyes as I turned towards the window again. What does he mean by vibes? Good vibes? I guess that means I'm good, right? We pull up at the club that I am much too familiar with. Bakugo and Kaminari get out of the car, but I pull at Hitoshi's sleeve to stay in for a minute. Sparkles, well, we're supposed to be meeting with some other mafia. Bakugo is supposed to be talking to the leader about selling some guns. Kirishima says, sitting on the couch that wraps around in a U shape, so he faced us? Why weren't we told about this? We would have dressed nicer. I say, irritated. Well, we're probably gonna run back to the house before it all starts. Since it starts at around 11 o'clock. So we didn't want anyone to be wearing an uncomfortable suit for too long. Kirishima sips on his whiskey. I guess that makes sense. Shinso takes a sip as well. Hi guys. I recently found out that you could be reading this story on sites other than Wattpad. These sites aren't trustworthy and you shouldn't be using them. You risk the possibility of a malware attack. If you don't know what a malware attack is, here's the definition. A malware attack is when cybercriminals create malicious software that's installed on someone else's device without their knowledge to gain access to personal information or to damage the device, usually for financial gain. Different types of malware include viruses, spyware, ransomware, and Trojan horses. I don't want any of you to get a malware attack or anything like that. So I want you to stay safe and use Wattpad to read my story. Of course, it is still up to you if you'd like to use these sites. Just be aware that these sites are not safe to use. If you are currently using a site other than Wattpad to read my story and would like to read it safely, I will be posting the link to it below. https://www.wattpad.com/story/234474425. Source equals iOS and AMP. Medium equals link and AMP. Content equals story info and AMP. Page equals story details and AMP. Puname equals Babezilla and AMP. Originator equals 𝐥𝐵KWTZ 𝐶𝐬𝐴%2FD9M6ZX%. 2BDKVIPLQGQS7VR7P7 APTERMJS VEVOKNOKOXPMZXBIPES 7MBU4NS0OWX3PW691UF1% 2FW. We had just got back from changing at the house. I was wearing a nice vest and tie, with an undershirt and dress pants. Hitoshi was wearing something similar along with everyone else. We all looked well dressed. It was around 10:55 and Bakugo was starting to get antsy. He said he wanted Kirishima and I to sit with him for the meeting. Only because I'm apparently super smart and Kirishima is his right-hand man. It's only 10:55 Bakugo, they still have 5 minutes, calm down. I say, leaning back on the couch. We were sitting in the elevated VIP area. It had a large U-shaped couch surrounding a table. The VIP area was being guarded by Hitoshi and Kaminari. The club was already bustling with people even if it opened only 30 minutes ago. The club opens at 10:30, so it's a little surprising for it to already be this full. It was a pretty popular club. Half and half, I heard Bakugo mutter. My BLD ran cold for a moment. He couldn't actually be meeting up with Todoroki, could he? He's not even the leader, yet just as I was going through the possibilities of Todoroki actually being here, he walks up to the VIP area. Instantly Hitoshi gives him a glare and stops him. This is VIP dash. Hitoshi was quickly cut off though. He's fine, let him through, Bakugo said, waving him off. Hitoshi steps to the side, letting Todoroki through. Todoroki gave a slight smug smirk to Hitoshi as he passed. Todoroki had the option to sit closer to me or Kirishima. It wasn't surprising when he chose me. Nice to see you again, Bakugo. Sorry that my father couldn't come, he was busy, Todoroki said as he took a seat. Whatever, half and half, let's just get down to business. Bakugo rolled his eyes as he spoke. Right, first though, why is Izuku with you? Todoroki slightly pointed towards me with his elbows propped on the table. Deku. How do you know him? Bakugo took a glance over at Todoroki and I. With slight interest. Oh, we're pretty good friends. We've known each other for quite a while now. Todoroki says, shifting his eyes over at me with an expressionless look. I slightly glare at Todoroki. Leaning forward, I grab a glass and pour some whiskey in it. We aren't really friends, Todoroki, I say, glancing up at him. Is that right? Then what would you call us? Exes. Todoroki leans in closer to me as he speaks. An old acquaintance? I don't move away from him, I just continue to glare. Todoroki, why don't we get to business? Bakugo clears his throat, getting our attention. Todoroki leans back to his original spot, smirking slightly. I had to look away from him. The hatred boiling up inside was too much, I couldn't bear the sight. I think Bakugo noticed how angry I was getting, or at least how uncomfortable I was. He kept side-glancing me. Hey Deku, can you go and let Mina know I want a bottle of scotch? Bakugo raises an eyebrow as he speaks and points towards Mina with his thumb. Yeah. I looked up at Todoroki, who nicely got out of the booth so I could get out. At least he wasn't so much of a PP to make me climb over him. Who am I kidding? If this wasn't a meeting, he would have made me. I slowly made my way over to Mina, trying to waste as much time possible. I made sure to take the long route and be super slow. When I actually got there, I was kind of sad. Hey Mina, can I have a bottle of scotch for the table? I say, giving a slight smile. Yes, sure, though Bakugo texted me. He said there was something up with you and that Todoroki guy. What's going on? Mina says as she grabs a bottle. I silently curse to myself. Why the hell does Bakugo care? He probably doesn't, just being a nosy, but why does it matter? I say, trying to grab the bottle, but she takes it away. Because we're all a team now. We can't keep secrets. Mina says, holding one finger up. I'll tell you when we get back. It's kind of a long story. Just give me the DM and bottle. I say, snatching at it. Fine, here you go. She finally gives it to me. Thanks. I say, leaving with a wave. I take the same long route back, making sure to be just as slow. To be honest, I almost dropped the bottle a couple times. There were people dancing everywhere. It was kind of a hassle. When I finally got back, Todoroki got up again so I could get through. I placed the bottle on the table and leaned back on the couch. Bakugo gave me an interested look. I just looked away. Anyways, I'm sure that concludes everything. Bakugo props his elbows on the table as he talks. Yeah, I guess it does. Todoroki gives his usual expressionless look as he speaks. He starts to get up but places something beside me. It was a piece of paper folded up. Give me a call? He whispers as he winks and walks away. I shudder a little at the thought of it. I quickly take the paper and crumple it up before putting it in my pocket. What was that all about? Kirishima says, leaning over the table to look at me. It was nothing, I say as I pour a glass of scotch. You have half and half. Bakugo blurts out, chuckling a little bit. I freeze a little bit. I look down at the glass of scotch I was holding. I couldn't get this overwhelming feeling of anger to leave the pit of my stomach. No, we never did anything like that. I twirl the glass in my hand as I lean on one of my hands. Didn't you guys date though? Kirishima says, getting curious. I guess, but it wasn't really a relationship. Izuku drinks the scotch and pours another glass. Then what was it? Bakugo says, now interested. It was more like me just having to tell him no all the time and him still trying to, do it. I just wasn't ready. I say, now a little tipsy since I'm a lightweight. What do you mean? Kirishima leans in more on the table. I mean, he doesn't take no for an answer. That was our whole relationship. All he wanted was 𝐎𝐸𝐸 and all I wanted was love. That was our whole relationship. It was I finally realize what I'm saying and snap my mouth shut. I'm going out to the car, let me know when we're leaving. Sighing, I get up from the table, leaving. I take a seat in the back of the car, slamming my head against the back of it. Tonight hasn't exactly been fun for me. I drink some water that I grabbed on my way out to try and sober up. I wasn't exactly drunk, but I surely wasn't sober. I hear a knock on the other side of the backseat window. It was Mina. I guess someone filled her in on my whereabouts. Hey Midoriya, Mina says, stepping into the car. Who told you that name? I take a big gulp of water. Hitoshi did. Bakugo told me you left in a rush though. Mina leaned back, propping her knees on the back of the front seat. Why does he care? I sigh as I lean my head on the window next to me. Believe it or not, Bakugo cares about all of his members, even if they're fairly new. Mina smiles over at me as she speaks. Yeah, whatever. What do you want? I glance over at her from the window. Well, I wanted to check on you, but you also said you'd tell me about Todoroki? Mina says with the same smile present. I guess I did say that, huh? Well, there's no use in hiding it. I'm sure Todoroki would tell you if you'd asked. I sigh as I turn back to the window. So you guys dated or something? Mina asks eagerly. Yes, in official terms we dated. Though it didn't feel like that much of a relationship, I look down sadly at my feet. What do you mean by that? Mina asks curiously. Well, when our relationship first started, it was magical. We went on dates, we bought each other stuff without asking, we cuddled. I looked down smiling, thinking of the good times I had with Shoto. What happened? Mina leans into her hand, moving towards me. It all just went downhill. He wanted something I wasn't ready for. We had moved into together and it was all still magical, but then he wanted more. He knew I wasn't ready for it. He kept trying and trying. Soon enough he started to get handsy with me. I didn't like that at all. I hold my hands together as I look down sadly. We stopped going on dates, stopped cuddling, he stopped getting me surprise gifts. It was like I wasn't good enough anymore. He still wouldn't give up on the idea of SEC though. It's not like I wouldn't have SEC eventually, it's just I wasn't ready. I hadn't had the best of experiences in my life and wasn't ready for another one. I look over at Mina, who was looking at me encouragingly to continue. One day I came home early. It was supposed to be a nice surprise. It was the day I found out what our whole relationship really was. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, but I quickly wiped it away. I walked into our bedroom only to find him with some girl from his group. It broke me. Apparently he had been cheating on me for one of the 2 years we were dating. We started dating at 18 and broke up at 20. It was just heartbreaking. Though I should have known it was coming, I wasn't providing for his need. I felt more tears slip out of my eyes as I spoke. What makes you think you weren't providing? I'm sure you were a great boyfriend. Just because you didn't want to have SEC doesn't mean anything. A relationship isn't all about section. Mina quickly wrapped her arms around me. But he said I was a bad boyfriend. He said I could and never provide for him. That's why he did that. It was my fault. I broke down in tears in Mina's arms. No. He did that because he can't keep it in his pants. You don't need to have SEC to be in a relationship. Need in a relationship is trust and love. Who cares if you have section? Mina rubs my back as I cry into her shoulder. Why, you really believed it? I look up from her arms. Of course I do. Mina leans back, still holding me in her arms. I may have just met you, but I have heard so many stories about you. I've heard about how amazing you are. How you can hack into almost anything, how you can talk people into an agreement. You're amazing. I'm sure there are many other things I don't know about you too. Mina looks at me with a sincere smile on her face. Why, you're too kind. I just met you and here I am crying. I wipe the tears off my face and unwrap myself from her arms. It's fine. Everyone in the group needs to be able to trust each other. Even if you don't fully trust me, I want you to know you can come to me with these types of things. Mina smiles as she speaks. Thanks, Mina. I smile slightly back at her. Both the front car doors open. Bakugo gets into the driver's seat and Kaminari gets into the passenger's. Hitoshi knocks onto the window Mina was sitting beside. He makes a gesture with his hands signaling for her to get out. Mina rolls her eyes and gets out of the car, waving goodbye to me as she does. See ya later, Midoriya. Mina says as she makes her way back into the club. Hey Midoriya, it looks like the others are gonna stay here for the rest of the night, but we're going back. Hitoshi says, stepping into the car. Right, that's fine with me. I look away towards the window so he doesn't see my tear-stained cheeks and puffy red eyes. I want to have a talk with you later, Deku. Bakugo looks at me through the mirror as he speaks. Whatever. I roll my eyes back over to the window after making eye contact with him. We finally made our way back to the mansion. Bakugo had quickly instructed me to follow him back to our room. I barely had time to say goodbye to Hitoshi before he started to walk away. I wasn't going to be able to find my way back by myself, so I was forced to follow. Once we got back, Bakugo shut the door behind me after I stepped in. He leaned up against the door with an intimidating expression as he looked at me. I looked back at him with an equally intimidating look. Though it probably wasn't that scary. Who's Icehot to you? Bakugo narrows his eyes farther. He's no one. I don't know why you care. I roll my eyes as I start to walk towards the closet to change. Because you're one of my teammates now. I need to know about you. Bakugo grabbed my wrist to stop me from walking away. So what? Why were you sending Mina around to find me tonight? You were texting her about me the whole time. I glared down at his hand, then back up at his eyes. You interest me. If you have problems with someone, I need to take care of it. Bakugo had a determined look in his eyes. What? Take care of it? What do you even mean? Interest you? I look up at Bakugo with confusion. Interest? Bakugo pulls my wrist so that my chest is up against his. I look up at Bakugo, a blush clearly present on my face. He looked down with a determined expression. No smug smirk or amused look in his eyes. Pure determination. It was kind of hot to see him so focused. And why is that? I look up at his eyes that were peering down at mine. To be honest, Bakugo was right about to explain, but we were interrupted. A knock on the door interrupted our little moment. It was a hard and fast knock, sounding pretty urgent. Bakugo, they need you back at the club. Kaminari was yelling through the door. Bakugo lets me go and makes his way over to the door, swinging the door open. What do you want, Pikachu? Kaminari looks as if he was shrinking down to the floor as Bakugo yelled into his face. Well, there was a huge fight. Kirishima, Zero, and Mina were all injured. Kaminari rubs the back of his neck as he looks down nervously. Fine, let's go. Bakugo started to make his way out but turned around to face me. See ya later, Deku? He had his stupid smug smirk as he walked out. I rolled my eyes, making my way to the closet. I still had a deep red blush on my face. Who the hell did he think he was? Just because he was some kind of big mafia boss doesn't mean he can treat me like that. I don't have to tell him anything about Todoroki. Though Mina will probably tell him everything. They're a tight team. They probably tell each other everything. I sigh as I change into a t-shirt. It looked a little bigger than usual and I don't recognize it. Maybe Dad bought it for me and just didn't know my size. It was a black shirt with an orange X on it. It went all the way down to my thighs. I mean, I can't believe Dad was this off with my size. After putting some but shorts on, I jumped into bed. Today has been kind of exhausting. Waking up, I felt a tickle on my forehead. I could tell it was my hair, but I couldn't tell why it was moving. I slowly opened my eyes to see Bakugo playing with my hair. What are you doing? I jump back and fall off the bed. Bakugo laughs and pops his head off the side to look at me. I rub my side that hurt from falling. What's so damn funny? Glaring up at Bakugo, I yelled at him. Nothing, you just look so cute in my shirt. Bakugo says, leaning his head on his hand. I looked down at the shirt I was wearing with a blush on my face. I quickly jump up off the floor and run to the closet. I could hear Bakugo laughing as I ran. It made me so flustered that I actually was wearing Bakugo's shirt. I sat in the closet for about 5 minutes just blushing. My face was buried in my hands. Finally, I stood up and decided to get dressed for the day. Deciding to go for an punk alt look, I grabbed a black mesh fishnet long-sleeved CRP top, black long cargo pants with chains, black platform boots, and some chain necklaces to go with it. It wasn't something I always wore, but I liked outfits like this. I had a lot of styles. I had an array going from punk alt to pastel goth. Dad and Papa never minded buying me clothes that I wanted. I also made a lot of money selling info and from hacking. So I have a lot of clothes. Walking out of the closet, I had a growing blush on my face. Bakugo was laying on the bed shirtless, smirking over at me. He knew what he did. Did you have fun sulking in the closet? Bakugo raises an eyebrow as he speaks. I did. I cross my arms and walk over to the mirror. Oh, someone is in a bad mood today. Bakugo gets up to go to the closet to change. I'm in a great mood. I puff my cheeks up as I start to brush my hair. Bakugo laughs and goes into the closet. I start to brush my hair and mumble about how much I hate Bakugo. He was hot, sure, but he's annoying. How dare he touch my hair? And be that close to my face when he does it too. Bakugo walks out about 10 minutes later. He was wearing a black short-sleeved sweatshirt, a white long-sleeved undershirt, ripped jeans, and some Converse. I think I have a little idea for today. I was standing outside the mall with Mina, Shiro, Kirishima, and Bakugo. Shinso didn't want to come, so Kaminari decided to stay back with him. You still haven't told me why we're here. I ask Bakugo as we start to walk around. I decided to get you some recourses for the base. Bakugo continues to walk. What does that mean? Mina, Kirishima, and Shiro all part from us as Bakugo and I continue. The base doesn't exactly have a hacker. So we don't have a lot of computers and stuff for you to use there. So I want you to pick out anything you'll need at the base at the tech store. We stop in front of a big technology store. Anything. Do you know how expensive this stuff can be? I look at Bakugo with surprise. I don't really care. Plus, as long as you're going to be working for me, I need you to have the best stuff. So don't hesitate. We walk in and I start picking stuff out. Looking around, I noticed that they had a lot of new models. I didn't want to exploit Bakugo's wealth, so I chose things just a couple levels under what would be the most expensive. I mean, it was still pretty expensive though. It was for the base though, not like it was exactly for me. You ready? Bakugo was holding on to a few things for me. Yeah, let's go check out. I grabbed the rest of the things and made my way over. We finished in the tech store and decided to head over to the food court. The other 3 were supposed to meet up with us there. Hey guys. We're over here. Kirishima waves us over from a table in the middle of the food court. Bakugo and I walk over to them. As soon as we get there, Bakugo immediately hands all the bags he was holding to Shiro. then takes the ones I was holding and hands them to him as well. What the hell, Bakugo? 𝐒𝐭𝐲 was barely able to stand with all the bags in his hands. Bring those out to the car for me, would you, tape dispenser? Bakugo throws the keys to him. Fine. 𝐒𝐭𝐲 barely catches the keys. Here, will help you out, 𝐒𝐭𝐲. Kirishima grabs some bags and hands some to Mina. We will. Mina groans. We will. Kirishima grabs some and starts to walk away. I'm sorry guys. You want my help? I ask before they leave. Nah, it's cool. Kirishima waves and they all walk off to the car. Why'd you do that? I sit down at one of the tables. We already carried them all the way here. Plus we don't want them to get damaged while we're walking around. Bakugo sits down across from me. Yeah, I guess you're right. I lean on my hand and look around the court. You know, I was thinking of maybe showing you around the base today. Bakugo leans on his hand so that we were inches apart. That'd be cool. I blush and sit back up. Hey guys, we're back. Mina comes running up to the table with Kirishima and 𝐒𝐭𝐲 walking behind. Hey guys. I look down, still slightly blushing. Bakugo smirks over at me when I glance up at him. Did we interrupt something? 𝐒𝐭𝐲 looks over at Bakugo, then at me. No. I dart my head up with a flustered expression. You're right. Were you guys flirting? Mina leans in between the two of us, smirking. TCH, stupid extras. Shut up, we're leaving now. Bakugo stands up quickly and starts to head towards the exit. That's no fun. Mina goes skipping after him. Soon 𝐒𝐭𝐲, Kirishima, and I all follow after them. I still had a slight blush present, but it was hard to subdue. Especially when Mina kept glancing back and wiggling her eyebrows. It just made me remember how close Bakugo was. We finally got outside. We took 2 cars here as to not be cramped. The way here it was Bakugo, Kirishima and I in one car and 𝐒𝐭𝐲 and Mina in the other. We'll take the other car. You guys take that one. Mina quickly pulls Kirishima and 𝐒𝐭𝐲 towards the other car. Anyways, you ready to go see the base? I texted Pikachu and told him to bring eye bags since this is the first time you guys will be going there. Bakugo entered the driver's seat. I got into the passenger side. You still haven't told me about your relationship with Icy Hot. Bakugo glances over at me while he pulls out. Who said I was gonna tell you? I roll my eyes and lean towards the window. Mina didn't tell him. That's a slight surprise. I'm sure she just hasn't gotten to it yet. Whatever, I won't push it. I will find out eventually though. Bakugo starts driving towards the base. The rest of the drive was silent. Neither of us had much to say to the other. Luckily the drive wasn't too long, so I didn't have to sit in the awkward silence for too long. This is it. Let's go. Bakugo hopped out and started walking towards a bar. How many bars and clubs do you own? I say as I get out. It's actually just a front for what's in the back. Bakugo walks through the front. He nods at the bartender. The bartender nods back before leading them to a door in a back room. He opens the room with a key. In the room already waiting was Kirishima, Mina, 𝐒𝐭𝐲, Kaminari, and Hitoshi. The room was filled with guns and equipment. Did you guys bring in the stuff we bought at the mall? Bakugo sits on one of the couches in the room. Yeah, we put it over there. 𝐒𝐭𝐲 points to a corner in the room. I look over in the corner. Surely enough, all the stuff we bought that day was there. Cool, can I go set it up? I was honestly super excited. Did you take all the men out? Yeah, they're all down. Good. Let's get all the guns and get out of here. None of them saw you, right? Nah, even if they did, they're probably dead. Good, let the games begin then. I finally finished setting everything up. I had 3 monitors along with 1 regular desktop. Obviously I had a keyboard and mouse. My desk was surprisingly big as well. It seemed as though Bakugo went through the trouble to pick one out that would be able to hold everything I needed since it was here before I arrived. Everything's ready. I smiled happily and sat down at the desk chair. It looks cool. It's almost as good as the setup you have at home. Hitoshi comes over and leans above the chair. I know, right? Bakugo got a lot of stuff for me. I started to screw around on the computer, just going through random sites. Hey guys, I just got a bad call. Mina says a bit urgently. What do you mean bad call? Bakugo sits up from the couch looking annoyed. Someone attacked one of our shipments, Mina quietly spoke out. Are you kidding me? Bakugo slammed his hands on the coffee table as he stood up from the couch. What the F happened? What happened to the shitty guards? Bakugo was yelling at this point, clearly enraged. They were all taken out. Bakugo, Mina says awkwardly in front of Bakugo. Do you know who took them at least? Bakugo was pinching the bridge of his nose angrily. A few of the injured men say someone with black hair and scarring around his body was there, along with someone with light blue hair and chapped lips. Mina reads a text message from her phone out loud. Why does that sound familiar? Bakugo scratches his head trying to think. I think we might be looking for Dabi and Shigaraki. They are from a gang called the League of Villains, also known as LOV. I say, still typing in my computer. How did you figure that out? Mina looks at me in astonishment. I've done this before. In fact, I have a whole coding program for it. I just put in the descriptions of the people and then the program will go through years of articles, news, posts, etc. I made it myself. I continue to type through the computer to try and get any more information on the LOV. He's more useful than you damn extras. Bakugo starts walking over to a wall of guns. What? No way. We're useful. Plus he probably just plays online games all day. Kaminari pouts on the couch. He just found our main suspects by typing into a computer. You sit around on the couch all day. If it came down to it, I'd choose Deku to be on my team. Bakugo grabs a pistol off the wall. What? That's so mean, Bakugo, Kaminari fake pouts. I blush slightly from the compliment. People don't often think that I'm important since I just work with computers. They think, oh well, you just sit around all day and play on a computer, you aren't that important. At least when they've only seen my hacking skills. I of course have other skills that are useful. Tell me, where can we find them? Bakugo turns to me as he loads his gun. I blush harder. Bakugo was looking straight at me with an angry, determined expression. He was loading his gun as he looked at me and talked to me. I swear I've never found someone so attractive before. I quickly turn away, still blushing, and start typing into the computer to try and find their location. While I'm typing through, I start to put in more possible details. I keep typing and looking through, but sadly I'm unable to find anything. I couldn't find anything. I'm sorry. I say nervously, somewhat afraid of Bakugo getting angry at me for not being able to find the location. It's fine. Do you have photos of them so if any of us see them we can let the others know? Bakugo leans over me and looks at the computer. I nod quickly and start to type again. Bakugo stood over me looking intensely at the computer as I typed. He was a bit close, but I didn't mind. Here we go. I turn around quickly. As I turn around, I make eye contact with Bakugo. We were face to face, maybe a couple inches away. I blush and quickly turn back around. Sorry, anyways, here are the pictures. I point at the screen with shaky hands. It's fine. I glance over to see Bakugo holding onto his mouth with his hand and slightly blushing. Send these to everyone. I'll give you everyone's phone number. With that he walks away. Well, guess there's nothing we can do about it. Hitoshi sits down on the couch with a shrug. Nothing now. I'll be sending you guys out to multiple clubs or bars in groups. If you guys see either of these two, you'll text the others. Bakugo puts his gun in the back of his waistband and sits down. What are the groups? I swivel my chair around to face them all. Shitty hair, raccoon eyes, and tape dispenser will be one group. I want you guys to go to my club. Pikachu and eyebags, you'll be another group. I want you guys to go to the Ice Bears bar. Finally, I'll be going with Deku. We'll be going to Club Sapphire. Bakugo leans on his knees deep in thought. Hitoshi rolls his eyes. When will we do all this? Kaminari says excitedly. Tonight. So get ready. The bastards who did this are going to die. Bakugo gets up from the couch and leaves. Bakugo and I went home to get dressed more appropriately for the club. I ended up changing into a red turtleneck with black jeans and black dress shoes. Bakugo went with a simple button-up black shirt, black pants, and black dress shoes. He had a couple of the top buttons undone though. We were now on our way to the club itself. I wasn't as nervous as I thought I would be. It's my first gig with Bakugo, but it's not my first gig. Do we have a plan? I look over at Bakugo from the passenger side. Not really. I was just thinking that we'd stick together and watch out for them. Bakugo glances over at me. We wouldn't cover enough ground if we stuck together. We need to split up, though it'll be a little more dangerous. I think the best course of action is for one of us to be on one side of the club and one be on the other. I start muttering, but I'm also sort of talking to him. Sounds like a plan. Bakugo smirks and starts to speed up. Eventually we're outside Club Sapphire. It was a decent club, I'm a regular here. It's probably my second favorite club. Of course Bakugo's is my first favorite. I haven't found them, but I got information on them. What kind of information? I got the names of a few of their other members. The ones we know are Shigaraki and Dabi. The names of the ones I got are Toga, Twice, Mustard, Magna, Spinner, and Kurogiri. Those are just the ones I got though. I slightly look up from my phone, not moving my head in the process. Didn't he say his name was Kurogiri? It could be a coincidence, but I'm about to text Kurogiri back when my vision starts to get blurry. The phone was all fuzzy and there was two of them. I look up at Kurogiri and Minoma to ask them what's going on. Hey guys, I think something's going on. I grab my head and lean onto the bar top. What do you mean? Are you okay, Midoriya? Geez, you've always been such a lightweight. Minoma shakes his head in disapproval. Is he alright? What should we do? You said he was a regular. Doesn't that mean he's kind of important, since he's on the list? Kurogiri glances from me to Minoma. Yeah, he is on the list. The boss also favors him since he knows his dad or some SHT. I guess I've got to take dash, Minoma sighs and starts to make his way around the bar top. Nah, don't worry about it. You'll get in trouble if you leave right now. I'm on break, so don't sweat it. Kurogiri grabs Minoma's shoulder before he makes his way all around. What about your friends that you usually see during break? You know, that Scar guy and Bun girl. Minoma makes a gesture above his head, making buns with his hands. I'm sure they'll understand. Kurogiri smiles and starts to walk over to me. I try to protest, but my lips just couldn't make any real words. Up we go. Kurogiri comes over to my stool and helps me up. We start walking towards the back door out. As we're walking, I put two and two together. I was drugged. Probably by Kurogiri. As we're walking, I glare at Kurogiri. He just makes an emotionless expression back. I should have been more careful. I usually am when it comes to clubs, but I wasn't, just because I trust Minoma. Who's that? It was the guy named Dabi. We were now in the back parking lot. Most people park in the front, so this place is deserted. This is Midoriya, or Izuku Aizawa, son of Shota Aizawa, the Mafia boss of Shi No Karasu. I'm walking around the club looking for Deku. He hadn't been answering his texts or calls. To be honest, I was starting to get a little worried about the stupid green 𝐵𝑠TRD. I walk up to the bar where he was supposed to be, seeing one of the bartenders I've seen multiple times before instead. Hey Rabies, have you seen a walking and talking broccoli anywhere around here? I lean over the bar top as I speak to him. Rabies? Really? Are you talking about Midoriya? Minoma comes over from where he was organizing some of the booze. Yeah. Where is he? I start to get a little antsy. He got a little tipsy. One of the other bartenders took him out back to cool down. Minoma pointed towards the back door with his thumb. What bartender? I narrow my eyes a little. A new guy, his name's Kurogiri. A real good guy. Minoma smiles a little. Kuro, Jesus Christ, I'll see you later, copycat. I book it towards the back door. Really? Copycat? It was one time. Minoma throws his hands up in the air. I keep fading in and out of consciousness. As far as I could tell, I was in a car. The guy named Dabi was in the back seat watching me, and Kurogiri was driving. Where are we going? I ask lazily. You'll see soon enough. Kurogiri answers from the front. Are you sure this is him? He didn't put up much of a fight. Even if he's drugged, I would expect a mafia boss's son to put up some kind of fight. Dabi looks down at me with doubt. I'm sure that's him. He doesn't exactly work in the area of fighting. As far as I've heard about him, he's the son that does most of the planning and information gathering. He may seem weak, but he's extremely smart. So keep an eye on him. Kurogiri glances at me. Through the mirror. Whatever you say, Kurogiri. Dabi rolls his eyes and leans back in the seat. I feel myself losing consciousness again but force myself to stay awake. I try to focus on my surroundings to try and see what exactly is going on. It didn't seem like I was tied up or anything, which was good. I looked over at the doors to see that they were locked. Though I could just unlock them. I would have to be quick about it though. I wasn't exactly sure where we were. I looked out the window trying to focus on the buildings passing by. Trying to identify at least one as we passed by. It was harder than it should have been since my eyes refused to focus. Eventually I saw a bar that I could identify as the 𝐒𝐬𝐧𝐻 bar. Kaminari and Hitoshi should be there. All I had to do now was wait for the next stop sign then book it. Luckily for me, 𝐸𝐸 didn't seem to be taking me seriously. 𝐒𝐻𝐲 was too focused on the road to be watching me either. As soon as we stopped I unlocked the door. I opened the door and ran out. I was having trouble keeping my feet placed, but if I focused hard enough everything was clear. I could hear the 2 car doors open almost immediately. 𝐸𝐸 was yelling out to me and 𝐒𝐻𝐲 was on the phone with someone. I could hear footsteps starting to run after me. When I got out there he was nowhere to be seen. I cursed under my breath. This wasn't good. This could mean that the LOV has a hold of him. I'm sure Eraserhead won't be happy about this. I quickly take my phone out to text the others the situation. He wasn't really sure how to explain the situation but he tried his best. We have a problem. I want all of you on the lookout for Deku. Also be actively looking for the 2 heirs from LOV. Why are we looking for Midoriya? Did something happen? Yeah, what happened to Midoriya? Oh, he probably just fell asleep or something. Not the time to be joking around Kaminari. Yeah, what if Midoriya is actually missing? He got captured by a man named 𝐒𝐻𝐲. I'm pretty sure at least. I don't know where he is. Weren't you the one who was supposed to be watching after him? It was a team mission. He looks after you and you look after him. You go and let him get kidnapped. Hey, I'm sure Bakubro didn't mean to. I'm sure there was a story behind what happened. We don't have time to fight, guys. We need to find Midoriya. Raccoon Eyes was right for once. We needed to find Deku. Us bickering isn't going to help us find him anytime soon. I could hear the footsteps behind me getting closer. I could also see the bar getting closer though. I pushed myself harder and eventually ran into the bar. I ran past people, pushing into them as I ran. I needed to find Hitoshi or Kaminari. I could still hear 𝐸𝐸 pushing people as he tried to get to me. Hitoshi! I saw Hitoshi's purple hair in the crowd. Running up to him, I practically fell onto him. Gripping onto his shirt with tears in my eyes. And Midoriya? Hitoshi looks down at me with shock. He's chasing me. I look behind myself then back at Hitoshi with pleading eyes. Who is? Hitoshi gripped me and pulled me into a hug. Hitoshi started to walk out of the bar with me. At this point I was bawling my eyes out. I couldn't think straight and everything was fuzzy. Kaminari will be here in a second. Let's get to the car. Hitoshi brought me over to the car, still holding me close. Hitoshi helped me into the back seat of the car. He sat next to me and held me in his arms. What happened, Midoriya? Hitoshi looked down at me with concerned eyes. He drugged me. Then they tried to kidnap me. I got out of the car and RN. I tried to wipe my eyes but the tears just kept coming. It's okay. Don't worry, I'm here now. They can't get you. Just go to sleep. Hitoshi patted my head and tried to get me to sleep. /happy face/ I woke up to find myself in my room again. I wasn't sure how I got here but what I was sure about was that I had a banging headache. Sitting up I notice a bottle of painkillers and a note on the nightstand beside me. Quickly I grabbed the painkillers, grabbing about 3 of them. Then I read the note. After I read the note I threw it back on the nightstand with a sigh. I grabbed my head and stood up with a groan. Can't wait for the DMN painkillers to kick in. This is probably one of the worst headaches I've ever had. I only remember a few things last night too. Like a guy named 𝐒𝐻𝐲 and meeting the guy 𝐸𝐸. Then I was in a car and then at the club. It's all so confusing to me. I walked over to the closet and got changed into high-waisted pink plaid shorts, white t-shirt CRP top that said flannel, and some white platform boots. I have a lot of platform boots. I stepped out of the closet and went over to the mirror. Looking at my hair I could tell I probably wasn't going to be able to do anything to it so I just left it. I grabbed my phone off the dresser and called Hitoshi. He was probably really worried about me, since I was literally drugged. Hey Hitoshi. My voice was groggy and lazy. Midoriya. Are you okay? Are you still in your room? I'm coming right now. He was talking quick, which was abnormal for him. Yeah, I'm still in my room. What happened? I dragged my hand down my face as I plopped down on the bed. I'm right outside your door, hold on. Hitoshi hangs up. Hitoshi comes through the door looking actually happy to see me, which he usually just looks tired or annoyed, so it's kind of weird to see him this way. I'm glad you're okay. Let's get you back to the base. Bakugo has a few things he wants you to do. Hitoshi grabs my hand and starts to drag me out. I groan in annoyance. Already over the day that has yet to come. Hitoshi drove me to the base where mostly everyone was waiting. Kirishima and Shiro were out looking for leads for the LOV again, while Mina was taking care of something about the gun trade. Kaminari and Bakugo were there though, waiting for us. Hey Midoriya. You look a lot better than you did yesterday. You looked really scary, to be honest. Kaminari rubs the back of his neck nervously. Scary? I walk past him and over to my little corner of computers. Yeah. You were mumbling in your sleep and were sweating like crazy. Not to mention you were throwing your hands around. Kaminari throws his hands around in the air as if to mimic me. Yeah, it was pretty worrisome. Hitoshi looks at me with a frown. Well, I'm all better now. I sigh and swirl around in my chair. Do you remember the Kurogiri guy? Bakugo looks at me while leaning on the couch. Kurogiri, yeah, I think he was the guy who drugged me. He was also driving the car. Though it's kind of blurry. All I remember is black hair with purple tips. I start typing in the name Kurogiri into my search engine. We'll try to find what you can on him. Bakugo groans in annoyance. Already on it. It looks like he popped out of nowhere. Literally. He didn't exist until a few years ago. Here's a picture of him. I send a picture of him to Bakugo, Kaminari, and Hitoshi. I'll send it to the rest of the group later. I turn around to face everyone. Good. Now I want everyone out, I need to talk to Deku. Bakugo makes eye contact with me. I gulp and look over at Hitoshi and Kaminari. Hitoshi gives me a reassuring look while Kaminari just shrugs. They both walk out. What did you want to talk about? I fiddle with the arms of the chair I was in. Bakugo gets up from the couch and walks over to me. He leans down, placing both his hands on both armrests, leaning dangerously close to my face. When you were gone yesterday, I was angry. Angry that I didn't know where you were. Bakugo makes direct eye contact as he speaks. I'm sorry. I blush at how close he was. I'll make sure you don't get kidnapped again. Even if I have to have you by my side everywhere I go. Bakugo brings a hand up to my chin and holds it up. I blush even harder as he stares deep into my eyes. We were only inches away from each other. You're actually kinda cute. I should have gotten a closer look earlier on. Bakugo smirks. I turn my gaze away from him. What exactly was I supposed to say to that? Bakugo pulls away and goes back to the couch. Kaminari and Hitoshi come in about 5 minutes later. I'm guessing Bakugo had texted them. I was still blushing really hard, but I was turned away so no one could see. I woke up with a gasp. I look around to see that Deku wasn't here, which was a relief for me. I had a little situation going on here. After taking care of the sheets and mind problem, I went to get changed. I put on one of my usual outfits, which consisted of a leather jacket, a t-shirt, and jeans. I looked over at myself in the mirror as I started to brush my hair. I started to think about my dream again. A blush growing on my face as I remembered it. I slammed my brush down on the dresser. A Bakugo. Kirishima pops his head in through the door. What? I yell at him. Sorry Bakubro. It's just Shiro said that someone spotted Dabi at a club not too far from here. Kirishima says happily. Fine, whatever, let's go. I roll my eyes and walk out the door. By the way, Deku is coming. Kirishima and I walk down the hall towards the door. Why? I glared at Kirishima. Oh well, he's just really good with people. He seems to get people to talk way quicker than we can. Kirishima shrugs and leans away from me a bit. Whatever. I blush a bit thinking about Deku. Hey guys. Deku is waiting over by the door for us already. See, let's go. I walk right past him and out the door. What's his problem? I walk with Kirishima to the car as Bakugo bolts past us. Not sure. He's been like this since I first saw him. Kirishima answers with a shrug. Kirishima and I get in the car. Kirishima sat in the back while I sat in the front. For some reason I got the vibe that Bakugo was mad at me or something. Are you mad at me? I lean over and whisper to Bakugo as he's driving. No. Now get back into your seat, stupid Deku. He angrily whispers back to me as he glances back and forth between me and the road. Oh. I go back to where I was sitting. I'm still getting the vibe he's mad at me though. We pull into the club parking lot. I've never been here surprisingly. It must be somewhat new, or maybe I've just never seen it. That's when I realized it's a gay club. Kirishima is a gay club? Bakugo turns in his seat to yell at Kirishima. I can't control where he was seen. Kirishima counters back. Let's go in. Bakugo gets out with a huff. Kirishima and I follow after him. This place isn't too bad. Actually, it's pretty nice. Kirishima says as we walk in. The music wasn't too loud, but it was loud over by the dance floor. The bar was nice. It looked actually somewhat clean. Not to mention there weren't that many drunk people. Yeah, it's actually pretty decent. I start walking away from Bakugo and Kirishima to explore. Bakugo grabs onto my wrist before I make it too far. Where do you think you're going? He says in a somewhat threatening tone. I look at him confused but also a little nervously. I was just going to explore. Bakugo shakes his head no. No, you're staying with me. Last time you did that you got kidnapped. He tightened his grip on my wrist and pulled me towards him. I got pulled into his chest while he wrapped an arm around my waist. I'd like to see anyone kidnap you now. Bakugo looks down at me with a smirk. I blush a dark red as I look away from him. What the hell is he doing? He does know he doesn't have to hold me like this in order to keep an eye out for me, right? Kirishima clears his throat from behind us. Bakugo turns his head to glare at him. Still holding on to me, may I add. Well, 𝐒𝐿 said that the guy saw him over at the bar. We'll probably have a better chance to find him over there. Kirishima says with a smile. Whatever. Let's go. Bakugo starts to walk over to the bar. I cross my arms in defiance as Bakugo still had his arm wrapped around my waist. What are you angry? Bakugo leans his head down to my ear and whispers. I blush even harder and shake my head no. Unable to get any words to form. We walk over to the bar and sit down. Bakugo wasn't really able to hold me at this point anymore because we had to sit in different stools that were farther apart. The bartender walked over and asked us what we wanted. After we told him, he went over and got the drinks. I just got a regular soda since I'm really a lightweight. I'm not sure what Bakugo and Kirishima got though. I sat there drinking my soda while Bakugo and Kirishima looked around for any of the LOV members. I glanced around occasionally, but I was pretty focused on my soda. On the ride here, Bakugo gave us a rundown on the information he had collected. He apparently got some names of some people who are in the LOV. Kirishima and I were told to keep the lookout for people with these names. As I'm looking around, I'm obviously eavesdropping. What else am I supposed to do? Bakugo and Kirishima were talking about what they're gonna do when they actually find someone from the league. It wasn't a very pleasant conversation to say the least. I'm listening to a particular conversation between a dark yellow-haired guy and the bartender a couple seats down. The bartender seemed to know the guy well. That's when I heard one of the names Bakugo mentioned. The guy the bartender was talking to was named Mustard. I listened in closer to their conversation. Yeah, you know, I'm just looking for someone to bring home again. The guy named Mustard sat with his elbows leaning forward on the bar top. His attention focused towards the bartender who seemed to be making him a drink at this time. You're always looking to bring someone home, Mustard, though it doesn't seem to ever work out. The bartender chuckled, giving Mustard his drink. Mustard grabs the drink with a sigh. I turn my attention to Bakugo, swiveling my swirly stool towards his direction. I still had my soda in both my hands and sipping it out of a straw. To be honest, I looked like a child. I took a long sip before talking to Bakugo. Bakugo, I think I found someone from the league. I held the soda in my lap as I kicked my feet on the stool. Bakugo looked at me from Kirishima with a raised eyebrow. Are you sure? How do you know? Bakugo puts his glass down and faces me. Kirishima popped his head from Bakugo's side to try and see me as I spoke. Well, the guy a couple seats down is named Mustard. It's not a very common name. I twirl my straw, almost entranced by my soda. Bakugo looks at Kirishima and Kirishima shrugs. Bakugo takes a sip from his glass as he takes a look at Mustard. What should we do, Bakugo? Kirishima places both hands on the bar top, looking at Bakugo with urgency. Bakugo looks back at Kirishima as he put his glass back down. Deku, what else do you know? Only his name or what? Bakugo looked over at me, who was currently sipping on their soda as if it was a sippy cup. Well, I heard that he's just here to hook up with someone. It also looks like he's a regular here and knows the bartender. But then that I don't know. I put down my now empty soda on the bar top. Kirishima pops his head around Bakugo again. What if you try to stuck him? Try to get him out of the club and in the car, then we put a gun up to his head. Kirishima put his hand into a gun shape and acts as if he's pulling the trigger. Bakugo shakes his head as he waves his hand in the air. No. Deku is not doing that. He'll get kidnapped or something again. I didn't listen to Bakugo. I was already on my way over to Mustard with my best flirtatious facade on. I take a seat beside and ask the waiter for an actual alcoholic drink. I take a few glances at Mustard to try and get his attention. He seems to notice and turns to me. Hello, what are you doing here tonight? Mustard leans on one side of the bar top. I look over at him with a slight smile. I was bored. Not much has been happening recently, you know. I stir the little umbrella in my glass as I side glance him. I then turn to him, putting one hand on his tie. I tighten his tie, making it look as if I was fixing it. Though you look like you'd be entertaining, I look up from my tie and up at his eyes. He looked a little shocked but was overall pleased. I had a slight smile on me face. Well then, why don't I buy you a drink? Mustard starts to wave over the bartender, but I stop him. I shake my head no. Why don't we skip all the formalities? Let's just get out of here, yeah. I get up from my seat and start walking away. Surely enough, he grabs his coat and starts to follow after. We walk out to the car and I get into the driver's side. He gets into the passenger's side without hesitation. We going to your place or mine? He puts a hand on my thigh and starts to rub it. Before I can even answer, Bakugo pops up from behind the passenger seat and puts a gun up to his head. Let's go back to mine, Bakugo says with a sneer. Kirishima pops up from behind the driver's, cracking his neck. Damn, it was really cramped back there. He starts stretching before getting into the actual back seat. Mustard had a confused expression and looked to me for answers. What's going on? He glared over at my way as he threw his hands in the air after being threatened with a gun. I yawned and started to pull out of the parking lot. You're involved with the League of Villains, correct? I glance over at him as I drive. He shifts in his seat uncomfortably. No, I don't know what that is. He looks between Kirishima, Bakugo, and I. Bakugo rolled his eyes and pushed the gun right up against his head. We know you're lying, UBC. Mustard flinches and tries to back away from Bakugo. I just continue to drive. Kirishima watches everything, making sure Bakugo doesn't actually shoot him. Don't worry, we'll know soon enough. Kirishima looks at him with a somewhat malicious grin. It was kind of creepy. I don't think I've ever seen this side of Kirishima. Bakugo makes sure to emphasize my nickname. Mustard tenses up even more at the sound of it, which makes me wonder what kind of work he does for the LOV exactly to have known my name. Not only to know my name but to tense up like that. I decided to leave a little parting gift for Mustard to make him panic even more. Might as well help Bakugo and Kirishima a little. I do a little fake salute and walk out of the room. I notice out the corner of my eye that Mustard was shaking and tears were coming out from under the blindfold. Unfortunately for me, the torture room was pretty close to the main room. I could hear him screaming out in pain every so often. At least they haven't brought Kaminari in. I'm sure I wouldn't be able to get any work done if they'd done that. Considering I didn't have Mustard's last name, I was having a bit of trouble. Going off of just Mustard, it often brought up articles and pictures of actual Mustard. I put the keywords of Mustard, social media, and Muzutafu, Japan into my search engine, hoping something would come up. Of course, a couple Mustard companies came up, but eventually I found Mustard's Facehook. I smiled to myself, happy I finally got a lead. I quickly scrolled my mouse over the little icon and clicked onto it. What I saw broke my heart. I knew I would have to report back, and I knew Bakugo would exploit it. On the page was a dark yellow-haired girl. Probably 12 years old. I looked at a couple of the photos and read under them to find out she was his sister. It was honestly kind of terrible that she would be roped into this. Overall, I feel bad that I'm gonna go tell Bakugo about this. Though he's the one that got into the business. Surely he knew the risks. I looked through a couple more of the photos to see her name is Sachio Ito. She seemed so joyful and happy in these photos. Let's hope it stays that way. I decided to do some more research on the girl. Turns out she's 11 years old and lives with Mustard. Their parents died in some car accident while she was just 4 years old. Mustard has been taking care of her ever since. Along with a couple other things about her. I sigh and start to use the social media account to find his address. I might as well have the address ready for Bakugo so that he can use it as blackmail. Fortunately for me, there was a photo on his Facebook that said, "Got a new place for sis and I," accompanied by a picture of a nice apartment. Now the picture didn't have any clues as to where it was, but you can usually track where a photo was posted. As in where and what time. So if this really was in his new apartment, and he still lives here, then I can track it through this photo. Sometimes the photos don't have the coordinates. Lucky for me, this one did. It gave me a long list of numbers which I just put into Google. It sent me straight to Street IDFC, Complex B, Apartment 32. This isn't the first time someone has asked me to do something like this. Neither is it the first time it's been a child. So it doesn't really get to me anymore. It's just the way this world works. Of course, so far every time it involves a child, the child never gets hurt, but that just seems to be because the people I work with have morals. I scribble down on a sticky note the name of the girl along with the address I found. Then I push out my chair and make my way down to the creepy room again. I hadn't noticed because I was so deep in thought, but it seems as though Mustard had stopped screaming. Maybe they're letting him rest up a bit. Or maybe he just passed out. I knock on the door to the little torture room. I hold my hands behind my back and rock on my heels. Ciro opened the door with a serious expression. I didn't even see him go in there, to be honest. He opens the door just wide enough so that I can see Mustard and the state that he's in. His head was hanging and he was covered in BLD. The chair was sitting there in a pool of red. To be honest, it looked like something out of a horror movie. Ciro tilted his head as he leaned on the doorway with one arm. I took the sticky note out from behind my back and waved it around as if it was candy. "I've got something Bakugo might want to see." I kept a straight face as I spoke. I never really found joy in exploiting others' loved ones. "Come in then." Ciro opened the door fully and I walked in. The stench of BLD was worse than before. The walls sprayed even more with red. Maybe a few teeth were on the ground as well. Bakugo leaned against the wall as Kirishima stood before Mustard. Probably about to beat him again. When Bakugo saw me enter the room, though, he motioned for Kirishima to stop what he was doing. "What? Do you need Deku? I'm kinda busy." Bakugo looked over at me with an annoyed face. I just rolled my eyes and held the sticky note in front of me so I could read it. Ito, Sachio, Street IDFC, Complex B, Apartment 32. I read the note in a somewhat monotonous voice. I could tell Bakugo was confused until Mustard's head shot up and he looked over in the direction of my voice. "Wait, no. Please not Sachio." His voice sounded urgent and he was trying to get out of his chair now. Bakugo smirked and walked over to him. He grabbed him by the hair and pulled his head back so that if he didn't have a BLD, he would be staring straight at him. "Tell me everything about her, Deku." He turns his head over at my direction. Mustard starts to struggle even more in the rope that was holding him in the chair. I try to think back as to what I read in the Facebook posts. He talked about his sister a lot, so I learned a lot of little facts. Well, she goes to elementary, her favorite food is cookies and cream mochi, she likes to swim and goes almost every Saturday, her favorite color is pink, and I was babbling on about the little girl. Mustard really did talk a lot about her, so I learned quite a few things. "Please stop." Mustard was in tears at this point. Bakugo gripped his hair tighter. "Then tell us what we want to know." Bakugo was starting to get impatient and I could tell. They'd been going at it in here for at least 3 hours. Bakugo grinned like a madman. That was the exact answer he was looking for. He threw Mustard's head back and crossed his arms. Who is it that you work for? Bakugo started walking over to one of the walls. He leaned up against it as he looked at Mustard intensely. His name is Shigaraki. Though I'm pretty sure he's not the big boss. He's kind of like the heir or whatever. He recently stole from another mafia. I don't know the details about it. I swear. All I know is that they stole the goods and took it to the base. Mustard was at the verge of crying at this point, probably scared for his sister's well-being. I watched from the sidelines, not really sure what to do. I kind of wanted to stay and watch to see what happens though. And where the F would the base be? Bakugo's patience was running low and Mustard wasn't being very descriptive. It was a bad mix. It's over on the west side at street number 432. It's a small bar in an alleyway that nobody ever goes to. It has a garage area that we use for storage though. He was trembling at the threatening tone of Bakugo's voice. Bakugo simply nodded and started to walk towards the door. He turned around and faced Zero. Kill him. That instant was when Mustard's world collapsed. I could tell by the way his head dropped and the tears started to fall slowly. Have 𝐎𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻 please. I have a family. Mustard pleaded out as he struggled against the ropes tying him down to the chair. Bakugo looked back at me and gestured for me to follow him. Then he looked over at Zero and gave him a nod. I complied and followed Bakugo out of the room. I've seen people die before, but it's not exactly my favorite thing. Bakugo shut the door behind me and we started to walk down the hall. I heard a gunshot about halfway down. Flinching slightly, I look over at Bakugo. He continued to look straight forward, his face seemingly holding no emotion. Though I could tell it bothered him. He may not want to show it, but the look in his eyes showed everything. He didn't want to kill him, he didn't want to leave that little girl to no one. He just had to do it for the better of the mafia. You think you can get the format of the location he was talking about? Bakugo glanced over at me as we walked into the main room. I gulped and nodded. Yeah, I can get that. I quickly run over to my computer. Sitting down, I start to type in the address that Mustard had given us. Surely enough, it was a bar located in an alleyway. I looked through a few things before I finally found the layout of the building. I sent it to everyone along with a message. Hey guys, I got the layout for the bar. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sure someone will fill you in. Though you should probably study this and look at all the exits. Just in case something happens. After I sent it, I looked over at Bakugo, who was looking at his phone intensely. Probably looking at the text I just sent. I get up from the chair and walk over to him, sitting beside him on the couch. What are you guys doing for the mission? You can't exactly waltz right in there. I lean back, crossing my legs and looking over at Bakugo. That's exactly what we're doing. Bakugo stands up and starts walking over to the gun wall. He grabs a pistol and starts loading it. I get up and follow him with a confused look. What do you mean? You can't go in without a plan. I look at the gun in his hand with a bit of doubt. Everyone else walks into the room at this point. That is the plan. I'm gonna go in there, kill everyone, then take my guns back. Bakugo turned towards the rest of the group. Now get ready. Zero, you look at the layout and the surrounding area yet? Mina, Kaminari, and Kirishima all start grabbing guns. Hitoshi kinda just watches in shock. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there are any windows into the actual bar. It's underground. So it looks like I'm coming in with you guys. Zero walks over and grabs a gun. Hitoshi and I just stand there bewildered. What are you waiting for, eyebags? Grab a gun and let's go. Bakugo glares over at Hitoshi as he gestured towards the guns. Everyone else had already gotten a gun ready. Hitoshi rolls his eyes and goes to grab a gun. I glare over at him. You're going with them. This is so reckless. I cross my arms as I try to talk some sense into them. Hitoshi just shrugs as he loads a gun. It's my job, Midoriya. Not really my choice on whether I want to go or not. Hitoshi starts walking out along with the others. Bakugo stays behind, staring at me with a determined look. It's not like I'm going to die. I've done this multiple times before. Calm yourself down, Deku. With that, Bakugo walked out of the room, leaving me there to think about what they're all about to do. Everybody except Midoriya left the base, carrying guns by their sides. They took 2 cars to make things easier. Before Bakugo left, he told Midoriya a few things about his job for the mission. Watch us from the street cameras. If any police show up, immediately text or call one of us. Bakugo starts walking out without saying another word. Midoriya wasn't too pleased with what was going on. "I'll do that," is all he was able to get out before everyone left. Midoriya sighed and went over to his seat with his computers. He started to try and hack into the security footage that they had around the bar. He even looked to see if they had any in the bar. Unfortunately for him, there was none, so he had to stick to street cameras. Once he hacked into them, he sat there and waited to see the group pull in. Hopefully they wouldn't cause too much of a ruckus. We all piled into the van. We usually take 1 car while doing missions. It's easier just in case somebody gets injured because there's more space. As we're getting in, I could feel the tension. Everyone felt uneasy about this job, but it had to be done. I started driving to the bar that Mustard had given us the address to. I could only hope that Midoriya would listen and watch our backs from the cameras. That he wasn't too mad to not listen. "We're seriously just going to walk right in there?" Hitoshi asks, looking at me through the driver's mirror. I roll my eyes a bit. "The plan is dash." I explain the plan in detail to everyone, telling each person their role in the situation. "We also have to pick up one last person. Mina, you texted Jiro, right?" I looked over at Mina through the mirror. I saw her nodding her head. "Who's Jiro?" Hitoshi asked, leaning forward a little. I roll my eyes at him. I forgot they'd never met. Jiro is always out with her girlfriend. Jiro is just another group member. She's like an info broker that can beat the SHT out of people too. I pull up in front of Momo's house, beeping the horn of the van. Running out comes Jiro. "Geez, chill out, Bakugo." She gets in, shutting the door of the van. I ignore what she said and speed off towards the van, letting the others fill her in on the plan. We had to drop her off to where we kept the other big trucks. If they actually did have the guns, then Jiro would be taking them in the truck and bringing them back to where they would be. After all that, we pulled up to the bar. I decided to have Siro sit in and wait in the driver's seat just in case we needed to make a quick escape. "Let's go." I motioned for everyone to go and do their role in the plan. I was supposed to go to the front door by myself, while Kirishima and Kaminari will be going through the back. Mina and Hitoshi will be getting in through an upper-level window and coming down from a few stairs. As I walk in, I noticed that sitting at the bar top was the person we had been looking for, Shigaraki. Along with Kurohige standing at the behind the bar, Dabi sitting over by the couch, and a couple other people. "And who might you be?" Shigaraki said as he turned his head from his drink to me. I scoff a little as I walk further in, closing the door behind me. "The one you stole that shipment from." I start to walk a little closer to him before Dabi and this blonde chick stand up and stop me. "What do you think you're doing?" the blonde chick said while waving a knife in front of me. Dabi has a gun in his waistband that I could see as well. "I think I'm about to kill you bastards." Right as I say that, Kirishima, Kaminari, Mina, Jiro, and Hitoshi burst through. All of them holding guns up towards a person. That's when I take my gun out and hold it towards the chick's head. "Listen, you're going to tell us where our shipment is, or you're all going to die," I said with a slight smirk. I could see that Shigaraki was fuming. He was shaking with absolutely anger. He started scratching at his neck like a madman. "Fine, take them to it, Kurohige." Shigaraki put his hand in the air, waving it around a little. Kurohige complied and started to walk off. I followed after him. "Stay here and watch these guys," I ordered the rest of them as I followed him. They all nodded back. I followed Kurohige down a long hall and into a big room. In there were a bunch of boxes. I could only assume were the guns. I grabbed my phone and started to call Jiro. She was already sitting outside the bar waiting. I texted everyone to go ahead and kill the bastards. So when I heard gunshots ring out in the bar, I brought my gun up to Kurohige's head, not hesitating to shoot. I walked back into the bar room where the scum's dead bodies laid. I looked over at Hitoshi, Kaminari, Mina, and Kirishima. "You four go get the boxes loaded into the truck, then clean this mess up. I'm leaving with Siro. He'll be back to pick you guys up." With that, I walked out, hearing groans as I did. I roll my eyes at their laziness but continued my walk. I got in the car with Zero and had him drive me home. Kaminari was shouting through the phone. Zero looked over at me from the driver's side, seemingly having had heard him through the phone. I could hear yelling in the background as he spoke. It sounded like Mina and Kirishima were doing their best to stop the bleeding. Crying was all I could do right now. I didn't know what else to do. Shinso was my brother. My only brother. I love him so much, he's been there for me through so much. I couldn't help but be angry at Bakugo. I told him not to go in without a plan, yet he did anyways. It seems as though he just didn't care. I'm sure he does, it just seems that way. It's been around 6 hours since Bakugo called me and told me about what happened. He tried to call me again, but I refused to answer. Mina called instead, which I did end up answering. She told me that they were going to move Hitoshi back to the mansion now that he was stable, but that he was in a coma. They didn't know how long he was gonna be like that. It could be days, weeks, or even months. I just want to be with him, but I have no way of getting there. I forgot my wallet back at the mansion, so now I have to wait for someone to come pick me up. Hearing the front door open made my head pop up. I'm just hoping it was whoever is supposed to take me home. I got up, wiping my teary eyes with my sleeve as I did. I walked over to the hallway to see Bakugo. "Hey," he said with a slight frown. I pointed my eyes towards the ground, not really sure what to say. "I came to pick you up, let's go." Bakugo motioned for me to follow and started to walk away. I nodded and followed after him. We walked out of the base and to the car. He got into the driver's seat and I got into the passenger's. Buckling up, I could feel the tension rising. I could tell Bakugo felt responsible, and he also felt that I felt he was responsible. I'm sorry, we sat in the car for a couple minutes in absolute silence. I couldn't look at him and he couldn't look at me. Neither of us knew what else to say. I finally turned my head to him with tears rolling down my face. I knew he could feel my stare because he turned towards me. "It's not your fault." I looked away, my head still facing him. He pulled me into a hug. Something I didn't expect at all. I melted into his arms and started to cry even harder. He drew circles on my back as I silently cried into his shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Deku." The grip he had around me tightened and my tears quickened. "I promise I'm gonna take care of you." We made our way into the mansion. As I walked by everyone they tried to say hi, but I ignored them. I just couldn't focus on anything but seeing Hitoshi. I walked down the hall with Bakugo. He was taking me to Hitoshi and it's all I cared about. When we finally got in front of the door to where Hitoshi was staying, I couldn't help the tears that were falling. I opened the door to see Hitoshi laying on a medical bed and hooked up to a bunch of wires. It all seemed so surreal to me. I walked up next to the bed and took a seat, taking his hand into mine as I sat down. When I looked up from his hand, I could see just how drained of life he looked. I dropped my forehead onto our intertwined hands. "Bakugo, what happened?" I turned my head slightly to look at Bakugo, who was watching from the doorway. He was shot. Somebody came from the upper level and took us by surprise. Bakugo crosses his arms, leaning against in the doorway with a frown. "Are they dead?" I look up at Bakugo. My eyes narrowing as I do. "What?" He looks back at me a bit surprised by what I said. I brought my head up slowly to look up at Bakugo. My stare was deadly and I was angry. If the BSTRD who shot Hitoshi wasn't dead, then the job wasn't done. "Yeah, they're dead." Bakugo narrowed his eyes at me. I nodded my head and leaned it back down on Hitoshi's hand. "I'll let you guys have some time alone." Bakugo left the room with a sigh, shutting the door behind him as he left. "I don't think I can handle you being gone for too long. You better wake up soon." I looked up at Hitoshi with more tears in my eyes. I take my other hand and wipe them, laughing a little bit. "You always did tell me I was a crybaby. I can hear you saying it even when you're not awake." I bring a hand up to run my fingers through his hair. "Why, you always did help me calm down during my little episodes. I just don't know what I'm going to do without you. So, you better wake up." I could feel myself slowly drifting off to sleep as I laid there with Hitoshi. I didn't dare protest, I just let myself fall into the darkness. It didn't take too much time for Aizawa and Hizashi to find out about what happened. To say they weren't pleased would be an understatement. They came rushing over to the mansion and Hizashi was bawling his eyes out when he entered. The scene they saw as they entered the room, Hitoshi and Midoriya were in, made their hearts drop. Midoriya has his hands wrapped around one of Hitoshi's and his head laying on top of them. Hisashi held his mouth with his hand as he pushed himself into Aizawa. Aizawa pulled Hisashi into a hug and pushed his head into Hisashi's shoulder. How could this have happened? Hisashi muttered out into Aizawa's chest. Aizawa shook his head as he hugged Hisashi. I don't know, baby, but I'll make sure he gets better. Aizawa turned his head over at his two sons who were sleeping away. His heart broke as he watched them, yet something about them sleeping next to each other brought back sweet memories of their childhood. Aizawa unwrapped his arms from Hisashi. He gave a slight frown as he cupped Hisashi's cheeks into his hands. His cheeks squeezing together a little, making Aizawa blush at his cuteness. I'm going to go talk to Bakugo. Get the whole story and all that. Watch over Izuku and Hitoshi while I'm gone. Hisashi nodded his head into Aizawa's hands. He looked determined to keep his kids safe. Hisashi went over and took a seat on the opposite side of the bed from Izuku. He placed his elbow on the arm of the chair, then rested his head on his hand. Watching the two sleep reminded him of when they were younger. Hisashi would often check in on them while they were sleeping, only to find them snuggling together in bed. Times like this made Hisashi wonder if he had brought them up right. Made him wonder if he should have brought them in the Mafia world or not. It was too late now, but he always thought about it. Aizawa wandered the halls for a little bit until he found Bakugo. He was with the rest of his group, but Aizawa didn't really care. If he had to, he would shoot him right here in front of them. Mind explaining this all to me? Aizawa started walking up to Bakugo. His eyes seemingly had darkened with rage. You could tell Bakugo was somewhat intimidated, but he was good at hiding his emotions. Things got complicated. 𝐒𝐻T happens in missions, you know that. Bakugo gestured for everyone to leave. After a few worried looks from everyone, they hesitantly left. Things got. My son almost died because of your 𝐒𝐻T leadership. Now tell me what the F happened. Aizawa took a few steps closer to Bakugo. They were face to face now, and the tension in the air was so thick you could cut it. We forgot to check the upstairs. Someone came down from there and shot Shinso. The shooter is dead now, but obviously Shinso is in bad shape. We rushed him to Ponytail's house. She's our personal doctor. She fixed him up, then we brought him back here. Bakugo was hesitant with what he said, making sure not to say the wrong thing. Aizawa took in all the information and in the end decided not to kill Bakugo. Though he really wanted to. He couldn't help but think what would have happened if they hadn't brought him to the doctor's house. Well, obviously Shinso is coming back with us. He can't stay here. I'm sure Midoriya will be fine here if you want him to stay. Aizawa didn't like the idea of Midoriya staying, but not only was it for the sake of the deal, but also he really needed the training and experience. Yeah, I want him to stay. He works well with the team and gets 𝐒𝐻T done. Bakugo started to think about how valuable of a teammate Deku actually was. He got 𝐒𝐻T done and fast. Fine, it's settled then. I'll have an ambulance come by right now. It shouldn't take too long. Aizawa walked away, grabbing at his phone. Bakugo rolled his eyes at the fact he was probably going to pull in a favor just to get an ambulance for him. As Aizawa was leaving the room, Izuku walked past. He put the phone down since he hadn't even dialed yet and gave him a hug. How are you? He pulled away and looked at him sadly. Izuku just frowned and pulled him back into the hug. Luckily they were in the hall where no one was. Izuku has just woken up and saw that Hisashi was there. After giving some hugs and catching up, he found out that Aizawa was also here. Izuku obviously wanted to see Aizawa, so he left to go find him. I just really hope he's okay. Izuku's grip around Aizawa got a little tighter as he spoke. Aizawa nodded in understanding as he held him. I know. Listen, you're gonna have to stay here, but we're taking Shinso back home to rest. Once he's all fixed up, I'm sure he'll come back. Until then, you have to stay here. Aizawa pulled away and looked at Midoriya seriously. Izuku nodded with determination. I've got to make a phone call. I'll see you later though. I love you. Aizawa hugged Izuku before he started to walk away. I love you too. Izuku whispered a little as he watched Aizawa leave. Izuku walked over to the living room where he found Bakugo sitting on the couch silently. He looked deep in thought until Midoriya entered the room. 𝐻𝐪 Bakugo looked up at him with a somewhat concerned look on his face. Izuku walked over and sat next to him. 𝐻𝐪 Bakugo turned towards him. He placed his elbows on his knees and held his head in his hands. He looked very troubled about what his next words were about to be. I'm sorry about what happened to Shinso. It's my fault. I should have done more as a leader. I should have listened to you. You knew that we should have had a better plan, yet I ignored you. Bakugo was cut off by Midoriya hugging him. I don't care. All I care about is that you got him back and that you know that you were wrong. Midoriya could feel tears pooling up in his eyes. It felt so nice that Bakugo could acknowledge that he was wrong. Bakugo at first froze, not really sure what to do. Soon he hugged Midoriya back. He could tell he needed it right now. Something about hugging him felt right. Made him feel warm and fuzzy inside too. The F are you two doing in here? Kaminari came into the room looking absolutely confused. Izuku jumped back from Bakugo with a blush spreading from his cheeks to his ears. Bakugo on the other hand looked absolutely pissed. What the F do you want? He jumped up from the couch and grabbed his gun, pointing it at Denki. Not that he was actually going to shoot, but he liked using it to intimidate him. Sorry, I was just passing by. Kaminari rolled his eyes a bit at the gun and walked off to the other room. Bakugo backed down next to Izuku, who was currently red as Kirishima's hair and hiding his face in his hands. Bakugo couldn't help but blush a little and snicker at the reaction Deku had. You're so damn cute? Bakugo leaned in close to Deku and pulled his hands away from his face. Izuku only got redder at how close he was. Why, you're a little close. Bakugo. Izuku managed to choke out, despite being utterly flustered. What would happen if I got closer? Bakugo moved his face even closer to Izuku's. Their noses touching now. Bakugo still had a hold of Midoriya's hands, but he didn't struggle against him. I don't know. Izuku slowly started to look down at Bakugo's lips, and Bakugo did the same. Why don't we find out? Face with hand over mouth, Bakugo and Izuku looked at each other's lips, waiting for somebody to make a move. Bakugo, being the confident person he is, obviously made the first move. He moved into Midoriya's face, pushing their lips together. He twisted his face to the side, so that their faces would mesh better. Bakugo let go of his hands, wrapping one hand around his waist and the other held the back of his head. Izuku's eyes were a bit wide at first. He didn't expect Bakugo to actually do it. Soon enough though, he closed his eyes, and when Bakugo let go of his hands he wrapped them around his neck. Midoriya fell off the couch almost instantly at the sound of his papa's voice. Bakugo on the other hand looked back in surprise, a hint of terror in his face. Midoriya quickly scrambled up from the ground and straightened up. He dusted his clothes off, averting his eyes from Hisashi. Bakugo on the other hand sat on the couch, chuckling into his hands slightly. What is the yelling about? Aizawa walks into the room looking somewhat tired. Midoriya's face goes an even brighter red. However, Bakugo stops his laughing and straightens his back on the couch, clearing his throat slightly. Oh, sorry, I saw a bug. Hisashi puts his hand on Aizawa's back and guides him out of the room. He looked somewhat confused but went along with Hisashi anyways. As Hisashi was walking away, he looked back and winked at Midoriya with a small smile. Midoriya covered his face with his hands and sat back down on the couch with Bakugo. Now where were we? Bakugo picks Midoriya up by the sides and places him on top of himself. Midoriya's legs on either side of Bakugo. Izuku looked down at Bakugo, shocked by his bold moves. He gasped a little as Bakugo grabbed him by the waist and pulled him into him. Their chests now pushing into each other. What if someone walks in? Midoriya looked away from Bakugo and at the two entrances of the living room. Like I give us, Bakugo brought one hand up to Midoriya's head and pushed it down to his. Their lips grabbing at each other once again. Midoriya's hands grabbed at the back of Bakugo's hair as he pushed farther into his chest. Bakugo started to bite at Midoriya's bottom lip, making Midoriya gasp in return. He took this as an opportunity to slip his tongue in and explore. Izuku had to admit he was enjoying every second of this. The way Bakugo touched him, how his lips touched his tongue exploring his mouth, but he had to stop. Now wasn't the time. Especially since anyone could walk in. Midoriya pulled away panting, a string of spit linking them together. Bakugo looked up at him a bit confused as he wiped his mouth. What? Midoriya blushed and got off his lap, wiping his lips as well. I don't want to get caught. It's not exactly the right time to be making out if you know what I mean. Midoriya's mind went back to Hitoshi. He felt kind of bad for making out with Bakugo while he was in another room in a coma. Bakugo seemed to catch on to what he was thinking and dropped the subject. I sat next to Bakugo on the couch, not really sure what to do now. It wasn't too long until Dad came back into the room though. He had his phone in his hand and Papa was following after him. The ambulance should be here any minute now. Since I told them to get here as soon as possible. Dad sat down on one of the other couches and Papa sat next to him. I could see Papa raising his eyebrows up and down at me, but I tried my best to ignore it. So, will they be taking Shinso back at home or to the hospital? I leaned forward a bit with anticipation. I wanted to know everything that was going to happen with Hitoshi. He's going to come back to the house. It would raise too much suspicion to bring him to the hospital. We will have a doctor and a few nurses on staff though. Papa answered while smiling a little bit. Surely to try and calm me down. That's good. I hope. I was interrupted by Dad's phone going off. When he answered, he almost immediately just hung up after a few words. They're here. Let's get Shinso all set to go. Papa and Dad both got up to help the paramedics get Hitoshi into the ambulance. I got up to help them as well when Papa stopped me. Why don't you wait here and we'll roll him on by? You can say goodbye before he leaves. Papa held his hand on my shoulder to stop me from going any further. I just nodded my head knowing it's best to just go along with it. After about 30 minutes, Hitoshi came strolling into the living room strapped down to a stretcher. Midoriya instantly got up and walked up to Hitoshi's side. They had him strapped into it to make sure he didn't fall out. I love you so much, Shinso. I promise I'll visit you. Make sure to wake up soon. Midoriya whispered down to him, Midoriya's forehead touching Hitoshi's. He smiled a little, hoping Hitoshi could hear him. We have to get going. Dad put a hand on Midoriya's shoulder, trying to get him to hurry up. Midoriya nodded and leaned back away from Hitoshi. They rolled him out of the mansion with Dad and Pops following behind. Midoriya waved to them, feeling bad that he couldn't come along. Well, now that that's over, let's get to bed. Bakugo yawned and started to walk towards the bedroom. Midoriya was starting to get a hang of where everything was, but he was tired too. He decided he might as well go to bed as well. Midoriya followed Bakugo to the bedroom. Midoriya caught Bakugo glancing over at him every once in a while, but he didn't do anything about it. In fact, all he did do was blush a little because the memories from earlier kept popping back up in Midoriya's head. When they finally got back in there, Bakugo didn't waste any time. He immediately went into the closet to get changed. He walked back out in some sweatpants and a tank top. Midoriya went in after him and got changed as well. He changed into a sweatshirt and shorts. Considering he was so tired, he didn't really care if he ended up touching Bakugo tonight. All he cared about was getting some sleep. Midoriya ended up actually snuggling up next to Bakugo. Bakugo didn't seem to mind though. In fact, he snuggled right up to Midoriya as well. It was really nice. He snuggled up into Bakugo's chest and he held Midoriya in his arms. It was soothing to say the least. When Midoriya woke up, Bakugo wasn't there, which was a bit unusual. The only time he hadn't been there was when Midoriya was drugged the night before. Midoriya didn't really think too much about it and just went on with his day. He had to take a shower since he forgot to take one yesterday because of all of the chaos, so he grabbed a towel and some clothes. Midoriya goes over to the bathroom and opens the door. He almost instantly turns red, dropping all of the things in his hands. There, standing right in front of Midoriya, was a half-naked Bakugo. He was in only a towel, showing off his toned body. Bakugo's hair was still somewhat wet, but it looked like he was in the middle of drying it. He didn't look too mad that Midoriya walked in on him. Actually, he looked somewhat pleased. Do you need something, Deku? Bakugo walked forward a bit and leaned in, placing an arm by Midoriya's head. And on the wall beside him, Midoriya was still in the doorway right in front of Bakugo. No, I'm sorry. He shook his head quickly before he ran out the door and shut it. Midoriya didn't even think to grab the stuff he dropped. He just left it in there with Bakugo. Midoriya jumped onto the bed and covered himself with the blanket. Trying to hide himself from the world was all he could think to do at the moment. Before Midoriya could scorn himself anymore, he heard the click of the bathroom door open. He clutched at the blanket a little tighter as he heard Bakugo walk into the room. "The bathroom's open now if you want it." Midoriya could hear a low chuckle come out from Bakugo's voice, and he couldn't help but want to strangle him. Midoriya popped his head out from under the blanket, his face red as ever. Bakugo didn't seem to mind the death glare Midoriya was giving him, as he just went on his way over to the closet. "If you want to look, go ahead, but don't get mad if I look the next time I'm given a chance," Bakugo smugly said as he looked back at Midoriya. Bakugo was still shirtless, only wrapping the bottom half of his body in a towel. Midoriya only got redder at Bakugo's comment. Jumping out of the bed, he ignored Bakugo completely and went over to the bathroom. Bakugo could be heard laughing a little bit as Midoriya made his way in there. When Midoriya went in, he found his clothes and towel neatly folded on the counter. When he had left, they were on the floor. Midoriya didn't think too much of it and just went to take his shower. He really needed it right now, the calming feeling of water hitting his skin. Taking showers always seemed to calm him down, and right now he was a bit stressed over everything that's going on. Midoriya stepped out of the shower and got dressed pretty quickly. As usual, his outfit was pretty elaborate. It included high-waisted black shorts with 3 silver buttons on each side, a black loose CRP top, fishnets, and black thigh highs with 2 white stripes at the top. He hadn't yet put on his shoes, but he was planning on wearing his bulky heeled black boots. After he had gotten dressed, he made his way out to Bakugo. "We're going to meet Halfie again today. I don't know what your relationship with him is, but everyone is going." Bakugo was leaning forward on the bed, his phone in his hand. He looked pretty serious about it. "That's fine." It wasn't fine, but Midoriya couldn't let his feelings get in the way of work. He also felt somewhat safe if everyone else was going to be there. Sure, Todoroki was a pervert, but he wouldn't do anything in front of others. "You look nice." Bakugo got up from where he was sitting and walked over to Midoriya. He stood in front of Midoriya, towering above him considering how short he was. Bakugo moved a piece of hair out of his face to get a better view. "Thanks." Midoriya blushes and looked down at his feet. He still hadn't put on his shoes, and he just now realized. He moved away from Bakugo, who didn't look too happy about him moving away, and went to get his shoes in the closet. Midoriya slipped his shoes on and walked over to Bakugo, who looked more than ready to go. It was only 12:36 p.m. in the day, but they still had to go and get the club ready and had other stuff to do for the gun trade. Midoriya was sitting next to Bakugo at the club. It was the VIP area, and Bakugo had insisted that Midoriya stayed with him. Midoriya was very hesitant since he knew that he would have to interact more with Todoroki this way, but he knew that Bakugo would say something if anything happened. Not to mention that Mina and 𝐬𝐸 were also at the table. It was a circular table, a large one at that. All 4 of them could sit on one side of the table, leaving the other side for Todoroki. 𝐬𝐸 was on the outside, Bakugo was next to 𝐬𝐸, Midoriya was next to Bakugo, and Mina was on the inside next to Midoriya. Mina was against having Midoriya there, since she knew what had happened between Midoriya and Todoroki. Though Midoriya calmed her down and insisted that it was fine. Bakugo was thoroughly confused on the whole encounter between Midoriya and Mina, but decided to ignore it altogether. By the time everyone was calmed down and in their seats, it was around 11:26 p.m. Todoroki is supposed to get there at 11:30 p.m., so no one was really worried yet. Right as I started to think about when Todoroki will be getting here, I noticed him making his way over here. He was wearing a nice suit with a loose tie. He looked nice, but not nearly as nice as Bakugo, who was wearing a suit with the top few buttons of his dress shirt undone. "Nice of you to join us, Halfie." Bakugo rolled his eyes as he went to grab a glass of whiskey. Todoroki took a seat and looked down at his watch, almost amused at Bakugo's comment. "It's only 11:28 p.m., Bakugo. I'm almost positive I'm early." Todoroki leaned back and crossed his arms. He made eye contact with everyone that was at the table, including me. It felt as if our eyes were glued to each other for an eternity, and I hated it. "You brought quite the group with you today. Aren't these meetings supposed to be confidential?" Todoroki scoffed out the last part. He even looked a bit angry about it. Bakugo rolled his eyes as he started to sip on his drink. Do you have a problem with my members being here? Bakugo crossed his legs and leaned back. Todoroki's eyes narrowed a bit at the question. Oh, I suppose they aren't really a problem. He looked straight at me as he answered it. Well, more like he looked me up and down as he said it. I felt a shiver go down my spine, not the good kind either. The kind that makes me feel like I'm prey about to be hunted by the predator. My eyes almost instantly moved to the floor. I just didn't want to look at him right now. I didn't want the bad feelings to flood back out. Mina seemed to notice how uncomfortable I was. She grabbed the hand that was resting beside her and gave it a light squeeze. She didn't look at me, but I knew she was trying to reassure me that everything was fine. Good, then let's get to business. Face with hand over mouth, the meeting started and I was already starting to doze off. I wasn't really paying attention since it didn't really have anything to do with me. Bakugo and Todoroki were just talking about the trades and such. Bakugo, I just got a text. I really have to go. 𝐬𝐬 gave a small wave before he got up from the table and left. He didn't even get to stay that long until he had to leave. A little while later Mina got a text from 𝐬𝐬 saying he needed help with something. She excused herself from the table. Before she left she gave me a small smile with a nod. I knew she was just being supportive, but it honestly just put me more on edge. It just made me know that I wasn't the only one who acknowledged the hungry looks I was getting from Todoroki. I have to go make sure everything is okay. There must be some kind of emergency. Bakugo gets up from the table and heads out. That left only Todoroki and I there. I watched sadly as Bakugo walked out the door into the backlot. I wanted him to stay. I felt safe when he was around. I shifted awkwardly in my seat. I noticed that Todoroki had got up only to sit right back down, but he had moved next to me. My heart was pounding in my chest and I refused to look up. I just stared at my hands that were resting in my lap. It's been a while. I really have missed you, Midoriya. He slowly started to move a hand onto my thigh, squeezing the inside of it. I watched with horror as he did so. I didn't know what to do or say, so I just let him. What else was I supposed to do? I was frozen in place. In one swift movement Todoroki was ripped off of me. I looked over to see him laying on the ground beside the booth, Bakugo standing above him with a gun pointing at his head. We pulled back from the kiss and I smiled at him. I had forgotten what a good kisser he is. It had only been a little bit since we had last kissed, but still. It feels like whenever our lips part I'm just searching for them again. Let's get going. Bakugo gestured for us to leave with his thumb. It was clear that he wanted to get out of here, and honestly I did too. The atmosphere of the club wasn't very welcoming and things just weren't as nice as I wished they were. Bakugo moved out of the seat so that I could get out as well. We started walking towards the door when suddenly his hand brushed up against his. I blushed at the sudden contact. Bakugo seemed to notice because he laughed a little. He grabbed my hand and gave it a light squeeze, which only caused me to blush even harder. They walked out of the club with their hands together. Midoriya couldn't even look in the direction of Bakugo, he was so flustered. Bakugo on the other hand walked with pride in his step and a smirk plastered on his face. He was clearly very happy to be able to show Midoriya off as his just by holding his hand, even if it wasn't official. They finally got to the car and got in. Bakugo was driving as usual and Midoriya was in the passenger's seat. Midoriya was starting to feel better about what had happened earlier, all because of Bakugo. He had comforted him after all that happened. Midoriya took a few glances over at Bakugo as they drove back to the mansion. Of course Bakugo knew that he was stealing a few glances at him, but he didn't say anything. Instead he stole a few when he wasn't looking as well. When they finally got back they got out and made their way in. It was a silent walk over to the room since neither knew what to say. Midoriya was still blushing since he couldn't get the earlier situation out of his head. Bakugo opened the door to their bedroom and they walked in. Only then did Midoriya realize just how tired he was. Seeing his bed made him extremely tired. He made his way over to the closet and grabbed the first thing that he saw, which just so happened to be one of Bakugo's black sweatshirts with a white skull on it. He didn't even bother to put on pants, only wearing boxer briefs when he walked out. Obviously Bakugo blushed and took an extra second to look at the beauty that just walked out of the closet. Though Midoriya didn't even seem that interested in him. He walked straight over to the bed and flopped on top of it. Bakugo couldn't help the small laugh that escaped his mouth. Bakugo went into the closet and changed quickly, coming out shirtless with pajama pants. He made his way over to Midoriya with a smile. He laid down beside him on the bed. As usual, he didn't touch him since he didn't want to make him uncomfortable. Though it didn't seem like that's how Midoriya wanted to sleep tonight. Midoriya snuggled up next to Bakugo, laying his head on his shoulder and placing his hands on Bakugo's chest. Of course, Bakugo had no problem with this. In fact, he felt quite the opposite. He liked having Midoriya laying beside him and snuggling up against him. He wrapped his arm around Midoriya with a small smile forming. He felt happier in this moment than he ever had before. Bakugo. Bakugo turned his head to look at Midoriya. He thought he was already asleep, so hearing him was a bit of a surprise. What is it, Deku? Bakugo brought his other hand over to brush a piece of hair out of Midoriya's face. Midoriya smiled slightly. Thank you. Midoriya looked up at Bakugo with large eyes. Bakugo's calm face turned into a shocked expression. For what? Bakugo honestly didn't know why Midoriya was saying thank you to him. Everything. You seem mean at first, but now I know you're actually really caring and kind. Midoriya blushed as he spoke. Bakugo's face was just becoming more shocked as he continued to speak. You really mean that? Bakugo brought his hand down from Midoriya's hair to his cheek, stroking it slightly. Midoriya nodded with a smile. I want to be with you, Midoriya. Bakugo said it so bluntly that Midoriya was a bit taken back, though he wasn't exactly against the idea. Why you do? Midoriya stuttered it out. He was still a bit shocked by the question just asked. He wrapped his arms around Bakugo completely and squeezed a little, resting his chin on his chest before he looked up at Bakugo. I want to be with you too. Hitoshi. Izuku ran into Shinso's arms with a smile on his face and tears in his eyes. He was more than happy to see that Hitoshi had recovered from his coma and was coming back to live in the mansion. Hatred. There were so many things going through his head right now. Story of what happened to you, but I know enough to know that people just aren't good enough for you. I don't trust him to treat you right. He's a short-tempered but he's not right for you. Let's go, we're done here. Shinso grabbed at Izuku's hand again, but it was slapped away. Izuku wasn't about to just leave with Shinso just because he didn't like Bakugo. After that whole situation, things seemed to go back to normal. You could find Midoriya on Bakugo's lap in the living room just talking, Mina, Sero, and Kirishima drunk, dancing in another part of the living room, and Denki flirting with Shinso in the kitchen. It all seemed pretty chill for the rest of the night. Once the party was over, Midoriya and Bakugo made their way back to their room. Neither of them were drunk since neither really wanted to do any drinking tonight. They quickly changed though and got into bed. Hey, what were you and Shinso talking about? The stuff that happened before, I mean. Bakugo spoon cuddled Izuku, holding him closely to his chest. Izuku tensed up a bit and Bakugo seemed to notice. He pulled Izuku even closer to him and nuzzled his head into the crook of Izuku's neck. Izuku seemed to calm down a bit, but he still seemed nervous. You don't have to tell me if you don't want to. Midoriya thought about it for a second. He truly trusted Bakugo, so he was pretty sure he could trust him with what happened. Though he hasn't even told Hitoshi the whole truth. This would be the first time he's told someone. Why, you love me, right? Midoriya's voice cracked a little. He was scared that if he told Katsuki what had happened to him, he won't love him anymore, or that he'll think he's disgusting, or too violated to be loved. Katsuki turned Izuku around so that he was facing him and gave him a kiss on the nose. They don't kiss on the lips often, but they still do it. Izuku just isn't that comfortable with kissing and SXL stuff, and Bakugo understands those boundaries. I love you more than anything. Izuku smiled and kissed him on the lips before he wrapped his arms around Bakugo, snuggling into him. He knew that he could trust Bakugo, it's just those small doubts in the back of his head he always has. Please don't judge me, Katsuki. Izuku was already on the verge of tears and he hadn't already started yet. Katsuki just pulled him closer and shook his head. He would never judge Izuku, no matter what he did. Izuku had never judged him, so he could never do it to him. I would never. Izuku let out a shaky breath as he collected his thoughts. He didn't know how to start out or how to tell the story. It was all so terrible. And complicated, not to mention fuzzy. When I was 5, my mom died. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I was still really sad about it. I didn't really get time to process it though, since my dad started acting weird towards me. He would take pictures of me with him touching me. Bakugo didn't really know how to respond to this, so he just rubbed soothing circles on Midoriya's back. This all was a lot to take in, but it must have been a lot harder to talk about. I didn't know that it was a bad thing to do, so I just let him do it to me. When I was around 7, that's when he started to. Midoriya broke down crying. It was so hard to actually say those words. To say that he was molested. To say that his own father had taken advantage of him at such a young age. Bakugo pulled him closer and told him how much he loved him, whispering sweet nothings in his ear. Sometimes he would invite his friend over. If he paid well enough, then Midoriya strengthened his grip on Bakugo, feeling tears roll down his face. Bakugo continued to rub circles on his back to try and calm him down. At one point it stopped. I got too old for him and he kicked me out. I lived on the streets by myself for about a month or 2, until I found Hitoshi. Then we stayed together and my dad and Papa found us. Midoriya felt a little better thinking about Hitoshi and his dads. Even if he had just had a fight with Hitoshi, he knew it was just because he was worried about him. Midoriya was worried with how Bakugo might respond. Even if he had been supportive throughout the story, he might actually want to break up with him now, or just date him out of pity. Midoriya hesitantly looked up at Bakugo, who looked back down at Midoriya. "I'm sorry." Tears started rolling down Midoriya's face as he apologized for practically nothing. Bakugo was confused because he didn't know what he was apologizing for. "You don't have to apologize. You didn't do anything. I love you so much, Izuku." He kissed him on the forehead as he smiled lightly. He held both sides of Izuku's head between his hands. Izuku couldn't help the warm feeling in his chest, making him feel more loved every second. "I love you too."